Hello everyone, do not forget to give that like, subscribe to the channel, and comment goddess. And do not forget, I am not a robot. The anime begins by showing us a strange light, while a person wonders where they are. At that moment, he remembers that he had been hit by a mysterious light. A goddess welcomes him, revealing that he was summoned to Midgard through an otherworldly summoning spell. She introduces herself as Lady Nolan and immediately apologizes, explaining that he ended up caught in a summoning that was intended for other people. She explains that the otherworldly summoning selects all of its targets at random from among countless worlds, but he had been excluded from the list of candidates. Yet, for some reason, he ended up being chosen anyway. Nolan explains that, to begin with, the otherworldly summoning spell is extremely dangerous, as the laws of that world and Earth are very different, and there is even a risk of Midgard collapsing. For this reason, the spell was forbidden, but a certain nation activated it in a completely reckless manner. As soon as she noticed the activation, she tried to intervene. However, she could not stop the process, and because of that, she ended up bringing the young man to that place. The mysterious man asks if the people who were also summoned are there, but Nolan explains that they were transported safely to the location where the spell was activated. The Holy Empire of Cydonia. In short, everything that happened to him was simply a massive accident. Upon hearing this, he requests that, in that case, he be returned to his world. But Nolan regrets to inform him that this is not possible. In fact, she became so furious about the incident that she altered the entire system to ensure that that forbidden spell could never be used again. She explains that there is a type of correction responsible for resolving the distortions between the laws of the worlds caused by the summoning, and she begins talking endlessly until the young man politely requests that she get straight to the point. Then, with a very serious expression, Nolan reveals that he will not be able to return to his world, and that furthermore, his original body no longer exists for him to return to. Completely desperate, he asks why all of this happened. The goddess answers that he likely suffered all those consequences precisely because he had been excluded from the list of targets for the summoning, and she sincerely apologizes once more. Not knowing what to do, he asks what will happen to him from then on. Nolan answers that he will have to accept the situation and try to live as an inhabitant of Midgard. Upon hearing this, the young man imagines that he will be sent to that place called Cydonia. Nolan confirms that this would be possible, but explains that the Holy Empire of Cydonia is an extremely problematic place, and since he was dragged into this entire situation by accident, he would be treated terribly. Therefore, she says she has a much better idea. Feeling guilty about what happened, she decides to send him to a different nation, offering all of her support. Furthermore, as a form of compensation, he will also receive her blessing. Confused, he asks what exactly this blessing means. Nolan explains that it works exactly like in video games and anime. In other words, she is about to send him to a real fantasy world. But he becomes even more anxious because of this, imagining that there must be goblins, dragons, and all kinds of monsters. But Nolan explains that this is precisely what her super support is for, so that he can survive peacefully. After everything is decided, she asks him to say status. Upon doing this, a status screen appears before him, where we discover that his name is Takumi Uruma, of the human race, and that he is 17 years old, which represents a massive advantage, since he was previously an office worker nearly 40 years old. Nolan explains that hero and warrior are two of the possible professions. Should he wish to follow the path of an adventurer, he will also be able to choose between swordsman, mage, knight, thief, or hunter. On the other hand, production professions are very tedious, so she suggests that he choose a life focused on combat. But if he prefers to follow a production profession, she will grant a very useful spell for that, recovery magic, which will also be necessary so that he can protect himself. In addition to a few more skills, after preparing her blessing, Nolan finally grants it to Takumi and wishes him a safe journey to the continent of Asgard. Even so, he complains, saying that she did not give him any truly coherent explanation. Immediately afterward, the scene changes, and Takumi ends up landing in a clearing. After walking a little and seeing his reflection in the river, he realizes that he is now very handsome and decides to leave the past completely behind. Upon checking his bag, he notices that he possesses food provisions and also a small amount of money. Next, upon analyzing his attributes once again, he realizes that he has received the appraisal skill at its maximum level, in addition to the item box also at its maximum level. Among his passive skills, he possesses light magic, fire magic, water magic, wind magic, and various other types of magic, all at level 1. along with the blessing of Lady Nolan. This makes him think that he might face trouble should people discover that he possesses the blessing of a goddess. With so many skills at his disposal, Takumi begins to think about testing his magic. However, he is afraid of using fire magic and accidentally burning down the entire forest. Therefore, he decides to experiment first with the other magics, such as wind, water, and earth. Becoming completely impressed, he realizes that he has truly ended up in a real fantasy world. But before anything else, Takumi needs to reach a town, while continuing his way against a beautiful wooden log. Upon appraising it, he discovers that it consists of treant wood, a very high-quality wood obtained from treants, monsters made of wood. This material is used in the manufacturing of staffs for mages and various magical objects. Upon activating his modeling skill, he crafts a spear, also acquiring the carpentry skill. After that, he thinks that if such valuable wood was simply lying there, then the plants in that forest must also be extremely valuable. Driven by curiosity, he begins to appraise all the surrounding plants, and is quite surprised to discover that many of them serve to produce different types of potions and poisons. In just a few minutes, he manages to gather a massive amount of herbs, so he wonders how he will be able to carry all of that, since it would hardly fit in his bag. At that moment, he remembers that he possesses the item box and proceeds to store all the plants in his inventory, which possesses infinite storage capacity. The only limitation is that he cannot store living creatures. As he continues his journey, a little girl appears running in desperation, screaming for help because she is being pursued by a giant rabbit. Takumi quickly holds his spear but becomes very terrified, even wondering if the rabbits of that world are carnivorous. The girl begs for his help, and even while trembling with fear, he delivers a single blow and defeats the monster instantly. Thrilled with the result, he begins to think that all of that can only be thanks to the blessing of Lady Nolan. Immediately afterward, a status window appears before him, informing him that he has now become a level 1 warrior. But instead of celebrating, Takumi complains, because that was not the profession he wanted to follow. The small girl thanks him for being saved and shares that she is from the village of Bowl. She explains that she was gathering medicinal plants but ended up getting lost in the forest, and because of that, she was attacked by this monster. Takumi then offers to accompany her back to the village, but before that, he makes sure to store the body of the rabbit inside his item box. Along the way, the girl introduces herself as Molly, and Takumi also states his name. Meanwhile, in the Holy Empire of Cydonia, we see the rest of the people who were summoned. They are completely frightened, having no idea where they are. At that moment, a mysterious figure wearing a hooded cloak appears before them and reveals that they were all summoned to that world with the objective of using their powers as heroes and saving it. The heroes refuse to cooperate with the Empire, since they were summoned without their consent. At that moment, the mysterious figure says that she will explain the entire situation later. Next, she removes her hood and introduces herself as the first Empress of Cydonia, Empress Elizabeth. At that exact instant, a young woman named Keed receives the blessing of Nolan, called Revelation. This skill ensures that, by following her instincts, she naturally finds the correct answer. As soon as she looks at Elizabeth, Keed immediately feels that that woman is extremely dangerous and definitely does not inspire trust. Meanwhile, Takumi accompanies little Molly back to her family, who becomes deeply grateful to him for having saved her. The girl's father introduces himself as Vanga, a hunter from the village, and also introduces his wife, Martha. Takumi asks if he could remain in that settlement for some time, and they accept without any problem. In fact, they explain that those lands are rich in medicinal ingredients and that there is a mine very close by, making the place a true paradise for artisans. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Vanga introduces Takumi to Bobbin, the village blacksmith and a man highly experienced in mining. They tell him that he can remain there for as long as he wishes, and Takumi, very excited, thanks them for the hospitality. However, there is a small problem. The village does not possess any hotel. For this reason, they suggest building a house so that he can live. Right after, everyone heads to a small plot of land, the only one available in the village. Takumi thanks them once again and begins to work, leveling the ground with his earth magic. During the process, his skill evolves in level, and he acquires a new capability called mana manipulation. Despite the massive expenditure of magical energy, Banga and Bobbin become impressed upon seeing him utilize magic, startled by their reaction. Takumi asks if he did something wrong, but Banga embraces him and tells him not to worry, affirming that they will take care of the rest of the construction. Just like this new life of Takumi, sometime later we see that he already possesses a small house. Thanks to his skills in carpentry, blacksmithing, and woodworking, he managed to manufacture a beautiful set of furniture, something that would easily make him a rich person in that small village. Even so, there is a single thing that continues to worry Takumi. He wants to know if he can change his profession. Suddenly, a new status window appears before him, showing various available professions. Happy as can be, he discovers that he can now choose. His options are carpenter, blacksmith, spirit, thief, or monk. Takumi ends up choosing the path of alchemy as his new profession. After concluding the change, he observes his workbench and notices that he possesses iron, silver, and copper ores, all extracted together with bobbin. In addition to magical iron, an ore impregnated with mana. He wastes no time and begins to transform all those materials into ingots. Excited to finally practice alchemy, he comments that this art is normally composed of 5 fundamental techniques: decomposition, extraction, pulverization, synthesis, and reconstruction. As he works, his alchemy level also increases rapidly. Excited, he already begins to imagine the quantity of objects he will be able to manufacture utilizing the iron and copper. Some time later, little Molly goes to his house to bring him dinner. But upon opening the door, she finds Takumi practically fainted from so much fatigue. Upon seeing his state, Marta scolds him for exerting himself beyond the limit. After receiving a healing potion given by Banga, Takumi recovers his strength and immediately returns to his alchemy experiments. But he has to control himself a little more, since Marta and Molly appear from time to check if he is well. In this manner, little by little, Takumi produces a massive quantity of ingots and manufactures various utensils, tools, and other objects. Next, he proceeds to train in blacksmithing alongside Bobbin. After a period of intense dedication, his alchemy already reaches level 33, while his blacksmithing reaches level 40. Later, Takumi meets again with Banga and asks if he could obtain some potions. Banga answers that there is no problem at all, but warns that all the available potions are quite basic. Takumi reveals that he actually intends to manufacture his own potions, utilizing the medicinal herbs he gathered in the forest. Banga approves of the idea without any objection. In the next scene, Takumi is looking like a mad scientist while mixing all kinds of plants in his experiment. When he finally finishes and compares his potions with the common ones, he realizes that the coloration is completely different, and, furthermore, he can clearly feel the mana present in them. Fascinated, he begins to desire to learn all types of potion manufacturing techniques. Right after, he decides to go to the forest to test some plants directly, but the experience ends in the worst possible way. He ends up ingesting a poisonous herb and, yes, gets poisoned. Desperate, Takumi quickly uses healing, purification, and recovery magics. At the same time, he acquires 2 skills, poison resistance and paralysis resistance. We then discover that he does this on purpose, because this is the fastest way to increase his resistance to negative effects and also to evolve his light magic. While attempting to stand up, he ends up coming face to face with a massive boar, which clearly does not look friendly at all. Wasting no time, Takumi grabs his spear and, when the boar charges for an attack, he counterattacks. However, his blow causes practically no damage, only leaving the monster even more infuriated. Next, Takumi tries to use wind cutter and rock bullets, but none of the magics manage to wound the creature. Not knowing what to do, he begins to retreat and ends up encountering a unique monster, a level 19 venomous spider. At first, he thinks that it is going to attack him from behind, but he soon notices that the spider is severely wounded. At that instant, the boar goes after Takumi again, but the spider steps in front of the attack and ends up getting even more injured. In complete desperation, Takumi realizes that his magic continues to have no effect against the boar, and during that moment, the critical moment awakens a new skill called intuition. When the boar attacks once more, Takumi leaps to the side and utilizes his alchemy to decompose part of the creature's body, finally managing to cause damage to the enemy. With this, he acquires 2 skills, martial arts and magical combat. In the end, it was precisely his alchemy that saved his life. As soon as the danger passes, he runs over to the spider and asks if she is alright, but notices that she is on the verge of death. Upon examining her, he notes that the boar ripped off one of her legs. Without hesitating, he uses his healing magic to save her. After helping her, Takumi says goodbye to the spider, but suddenly, a system window appears, asking if he wishes to tame the venomous spider. Surprised to discover that he can transform her into his companion, he looks at the little creature, who returns the gesture with an extremely adorable gaze. Incapable of refusing, he asks if she would like to accompany him. The spider answers via telepathy, and Takumi decides to give her the name Maple. Since the pattern on her back resembles a maple leaf, The creativity of this boy truly has no limits. After they establish the contract, the spider evolves into an assassin spider and instantly recovers the leg she lost. Very happy, she says that she will continue following her master from then on. Some time later, upon returning to the village, everyone is shocked to see Takumi, because he is bringing the massive body of a giant armored boar. But the astonishment increases even more when they notice that there is an assassin spider on his back. Takumi reassures the villagers, explaining that she is a monster he managed to tame. Even so, everyone becomes even more impressed, since according to the knowledge of that world, insect-type monsters simply cannot be domesticated. Yet, Takumi managed to do exactly that. Note, the spider is not an insect, it is an arachnid, but I think the scriptwriter forgot about that. Continuing, yet Takumi managed to do exactly that. Right after, everyone leaves the surprise aside to resolve a much more important matter. They want to know what they should do with all that boar meat. The villagers begin the preparations for a grand banquet. Later during the night, Banga delivers to Takumi all the remaining materials obtained from the monster and comments that should he travel to a large city, he will be able to sell the boar hide for a good price. Takumi asks where the largest city or closest village is located, and Banga answers that it is called Voltan. Bobbin comments that the village has become much more cheerful and prosperous since the arrival of Takumi, but believes that he is not the type who will remain forever in such a small place. Meanwhile, in another location, we see a young blonde woman observing everything through a window, while Nolan smiles satisfied upon noticing that Takumi is doing very well in his new life. Another young woman who is beside Nolan asks what she truly expects from Takumi, since she granted him a special body and also her blessing. But she reveals something even more important, that Nolan sent Takumi exactly 1 year into the past, before the Holy Empire of Cydonia activated the summoning spell. Even in the face of this revelation, Nolan answers that this possesses no meaning in particular, while she continues observing Takumi from a distance. Some time later we see Maple binding Takumi in her web. Takumi tells her to apologize, and Maple, embarrassed, begs for forgiveness, confessing that she did that because he spends all his time working, leaving her bored and with no one to play with. Upon hearing this, Takumi realizes that he truly spent too much time focused on the manufacturing of materials and potions. Feeling guilty, he also apologizes and promises that on that day he will play with her as well. However, at that moment, Marta appears bringing food for Takumi. As soon as she opens the door and comes across that scene, she becomes completely traumatized. Takumi tries to reassure her, explaining that Maple was not trying to devour him. Marta soon forgets the fright completely upon noticing the impressive quality of the silk produced by the spider. With a gaze almost frightening from being so excited, she begins to think about the possibilities. A short time later, Marta gathers the women of the village to show the extraordinary silk from Maple. She explains that normally, the silk from some monsters is utilized in the manufacturing of luxury items, and the one produced by Maple appears to be of exceptional quality. Then, Marta asks the little spider if she could produce a bit of elastic thread. Takumi highly doubts that Maple can understand what she is saying, but to his surprise, the spider begins to shoot large quantities of silk. Takumi approaches and asks if they had not agreed to play together. Maple looks at him with a very serious expression and answers via telepathy that she is busy because now she has work to do. With not much to argue, Takumi takes the opportunity to leave and take care of other tasks. While walking through the village, he realizes that it has already been a month since his arrival. At that moment, he begins to think that he would like to travel to the city in order to study alchemy in a more profound manner. The only problem is that he does not know how to tell this to the villagers, since everyone welcomed him so well and always treated him with enormous affection. Later, Takumi meets Bobbin, who is finishing manufacturing a suit of armor especially for him. Confused, Takumi asks why he would need armor, since his profession is focused on the creation and manufacturing of objects. Bobbin answers that for anyone with a creation profession who intends to enter the forest, they need armor, because that place is too dangerous for someone to walk around like an unprotected idiot. At that moment, Banga appears and tells Takumi that he already knows about his decision to leave for the city. He explains that if Takumi truly wants to grow as an alchemist, there is nowhere to run, and he will have to live in a place where there is a greater demand for materials and alchemical items. Next, he reveals that the following week, a merchant named Voltan will pass through the village and plans to speak with him to secure a spot in his carriage so that Takumi can go along. He becomes quite moved by all the consideration of the residents and thanks both Banga and Bobbin for all the help. After that, Takumi finds Marta, who is carrying the entrails of the killer rabbit that Benga defeated. She says that this is considered the most delicious part of the animal, but if it is not treated, it can develop a lot of parasites and cause various diseases. As the inhabitants of the village possess nothing to purify it, normally, they end up throwing this part of the meat away. But when hearing this, Takumi reveals that he can use purification magic. He casts the spell over the entrails, removing any impurity. Marta is astonished upon realizing that he masters light attribute magic, which is something quite rare. Despite thanking him for the help, she advises him not to use this type of magic in front of just anyone. There are very few people who can use light magic in the world, and many people manage to make a living solely by offering purification services. In the village, probably no one will care about this, but when he travels to other cities, he must take great care not to draw the attention of bad people. During the following week, Takumi dedicates all his time to strengthening the defenses of the village. He uses his best creation and alchemy skills, manufacturing a lot of equipment and improvements to ensure that the residents can live more safely and comfortably, even when he is about to leave. A few days later, the merchant Volton arrives at the village. As soon as he enters, his jaw drops at all the improvements made to the location. After speaking with Benga, Takumi introduces himself to the merchant. Before leaving, he mentions that he left about 100 potions in his house, and requests that they be distributed among the residents in case anyone needs them. Upon seeing one of the potions, Volton demonstrates enormous interest. Impressed by its quality, he asks for permission to examine it more closely and begins to analyze it carefully, realizing that it is a product far above the ordinary. At that moment, Marta and all the village residents approach to say goodbye to Takumi. Surrounded by the people who welcomed him since his arrival, he receives wishes for a safe journey and departs toward the city, beginning a new stage of his journey as an alchemist. Before he departs, Marta delivers to Takumi a new set of clothes made especially for him. As soon as he tries on the garment, Takumi becomes moved when he notices that it fits perfectly. Marta reveals that all the women of the village worked together to make it, while the design and pattern were created by the children of the village themselves. Deeply moved, Takumi thanks everyone. He comments that even though he lived there for only a short time, he feels that he received more affection and welcome than he could ever imagine. To him, that village became a true home. After that, the carriage departs. As it moves away, Takumi waves to all the residents, saying goodbye with a smile, but also with an enormous ache in his heart for leaving behind the people who became part of his life. During the journey, one of the passengers named Rias, still moved by the farewell, even starts to cry upon remembering the scene, and takes the opportunity to officially introduce himself to Takumi. Next, the red-haired adventurer mentions that his name is Rio, while the bald man beside him introduces himself as Bogard. Volton explains that the three are part of the adventurer party called the Lion's Mane, a rank C team tasked with escorting his carriage during the journey. Even though that route is usually quite peaceful, he comments that there is always the possibility of monsters appearing along the way. Curious, Rio asks Takumi why he carries a bag so carefully. Takumi answers that inside it is Maple, an assassin spider that he domesticated. Everyone is quite surprised when they hear this, mainly because she is such a dangerous monster. Rio, driven by curiosity, asks to see her up close. As soon as Maple puts her head out of the bag, she delivers a small strike to push him away, making it clear that she did not appreciate the approach. While Rio ends up being rejected, Bogard demonstrates that he likes the little spider quite a bit, and Maple appears to sympathize with him. Right after, Volton asks Takumi if he still possesses one of the potions he had shown in the village. Impressed by its quality, he mentions that he would have a lot of interest in purchasing them. The conversation is interrupted when a group of goblins emerges attacking the carriage. The members of the Lion's Mane spring into action. In just a few minutes, they eliminate all the monsters without major difficulties. After the combat, Maple comments telepathically to Takumi her impressions regarding the adventurers. She mentions that Bogard is a very nice person, but says she cannot stand Rio for being inconvenient, and that she considers Volton to be just an ordinary someone. With no further incident, the journey proceeds peacefully until they arrive at the kingdom of Barkila. Takumi becomes delighted upon seeing such a large city full of new things, observing everything around him with enormous enthusiasm. Next, he accompanies the Lion's Mane group to the Adventurers Guild. To remain in the city, he needs to officially register Maple as his tamed creature, and also make his own registration as an adventurer. In truth, Takumi would prefer to join an alchemist's guild, but he discovers that such an organization does not exist. Many artisans and merchants end up registering at the Adventurers Guild solely to obtain their official identification card. Furthermore, the lowest category adventurer license never expires, provided that the member completes at least one mission per month. During the registration process for Maple, the receptionist Hans becomes frightened upon discovering that Takumi possesses a domesticated assassin spider, something uncommon even by the standards of the guild. After that, he meets with Volton to negotiate his potions. Volton comments that he will pay 10 silver coins for each basic healing and vigor potion, while for the mana potions, he will pay 50 silver coins each. Takumi converts the Midgard coins to yen, since 1 silver coin is equivalent to 10 copper coins, which corresponds to 1,000 yen. 1 gold coin is equivalent to 100 silver coins, meaning 100,000 yen. And 1 platinum coin is equivalent to 100 gold coins, which corresponds to 10 million yen. With this, Takumi secures his first 7 million yen right in his first transaction. What is most impressive is that Volton comments that he is paying a bit below average because Takumi is not yet a renowned alchemist. Takumi thinks that is fair, but wonders why Volton is being so kind to him, even though they have just met. However, Volton soon comments that if he truly intends to work as an alchemist, the ideal thing would be to live in a house with a workshop. Takumi becomes nervous, as he has just arrived in the city and has no condition whatsoever to buy a house. So Volton suggests that he rent one and offers to show one to him. He calls his servant named Thomas and requests that he take him to the property. Takumi is delighted, because that looks more like a palace. Thomas explains that the rent costs 1 gold coin and 50 silver coins per month. Upon realizing that the price is quite low, Takumi even thinks that the house might be cursed. Even so, since it possesses a workshop, he decides to rent it. Sometime later, while they are walking through the city, Thomas advises that all the documentation will be ready so that Takumi can move in the following day. At that moment, Takumi senses a horrible smell, and Thomas asks if he is alright. Takumi confesses that he is quite bothered by the bad smell. Thomas explains that the smell comes from the sewage system. He comments that the nobles utilize artifacts to reduce this problem, but the city does not possess artifacts capable of purifying water. These artifacts can only be found in ancient ruins or in dungeons, making them very expensive item. For this reason, from time to time, priests are hired to purify the water. On the following day, Maple and Takumi move into the new house. Takumi immediately begins to work. His first invention is building a toilet. At the same time that he increases his alchemist level, he also improves his light magic. Despite becoming exhausted, he considers that it was worth it, as he now possesses his magnificent throne. At that moment, a scream startles him. Upon going out to check what happened, he notices that Volton is trapped in Maple's silk. Takumi warns that this usually only pleases the children of the village, but Volton comments that, in truth, the sensation is quite pleasant. A while later, Takumi apologizes for the incident, but Volton replies that there is no problem and asks if he can use the bathroom. A short time later, while Takumi scolds Maple, Volton steps out of the bathroom startled and asks what kind of bathroom that is. Takumi explains that it is a toilet equipped with an artifact capable of purifying everything after use, separating the clean water from the poop. Volton becomes very impressed and asks if Takumi is capable of using light magic. Remembering Marta's words, Takumi requests that he keep this a secret. Volton replies that there is no problem, but becomes very excited and asks if he could manufacture 50 or even 100 toilets just like that one. A bit nervous, Takumi answers that if he obtains the necessary materials, it might be possible. Volton comments that, in that case, he will need plenty of labor and recommends that Takumi make contracts with slaves. They could take care of the house, serve as an escort, and, thanks to the magic of the contract, they would be incapable of revealing his secrets. After all, possessing light magic means being a divine chosen one, or at least that is what the Holy Empire of Sidonia, leader of the Divine Light, claim. Volton further explains that the Church of the Divine Light welcomes all users of light magic and obtains massive profits utilizing their powers of healing. For this reason, they certainly would not be pleased at all to see a toilet with purifying magic spreading throughout the world. Takumi becomes quite worried, imagining that perhaps it is not safe to manufacture these artifacts. However, Volton says that he has already thought of a way to secure support for this project, so he does not need to worry. But he warns that Takumi's identity cannot be revealed. Volton returns to recommending slave contracts, but Takumi refuses, since that word possesses a very negative connotation for him. he prefers to do everything on his own rather than owning a slave. At that instant, Takumi's guild card begins to glow. Upon looking at it, a message appears, informing him that he has 1 month to complete the missions corresponding to his rank and that he must report to the guild before the indicated date. Upon seeing that message, Takumi realizes that he truly is going to need help. Therefore, Volton takes him to the Mulan Company, considered the most reliable slave business in the kingdom. He asks Takumi to wait for a moment. While waiting, Takumi walks through the facilities. During the walk, he ends up encountering an elf, who does not seem very happy and tells him to go away, saying that that place is not for children like him. After that, Takumi is introduced to the president of the Mulan Company, Lady Mulan. Volton introduces her to him formally and explains that Takumi is looking for a slave. However, he also comments that he demonstrates a certain hesitation regarding slavery, since in the place where he came from, no one makes contracts of this type. Mulan explains that, in a way, the contract establishes a relationship between master and servant, but in the kingdom of Barkula, slaves possess rights guaranteed by law. Upon seeing this, Takumi becomes much more at ease when he discovers that the kingdom ensures basic rights to slaves, such as housing, food, and clothing. Furthermore, the most important thing is that they are not forced to put their lives at risk. The main advantage of the contract is preventing the slave from simply abandoning their duties. Another important point is that slaves are incapable of revealing any information about their masters. Next, Mulan explains the main types of existing contracts. There are those destined for indebted people, who remain as slaves until they clear their debts. There also exist prisoners of war, who can work as slaves to rebuild their lives, criminals who remain enslaved until they are fit to reintegrate into society, and finally, people who were illegally enslaved by bandits. Volton tells Mulan that Takumi is interested in hiring a war slave who cannot regain freedom without his authorization. This is because Takumi is an inventor who possesses unique techniques and talents, and these skills cannot be copied by other people. Takumi confirms Volton's words, saying that he truly is a creator, and would like to be able to dedicate all his time to his inventions. However, he also needs to fulfill missions for the Adventurers Guild, and living alone has caused various problems. Therefore, he would be very satisfied to count on someone who could take care of the domestic chores and at the same time protect him during outings to gather materials, making it clear that this person has to keep their mouth shut and not reveal his work to anyone. Upon hearing Takumi's explanation, Mulan understands that he is looking for someone capable of taking care of domestic chores and also offering protection, so she says she can introduce 2 candidates to him. After that, she introduces Maria, a young woman who was kidnapped by bandits when she was still a child, and who today no longer has any family. Despite her difficult history, she knows how to read, write, and perform all domestic duties. Takumi explains that on the first floor of his house, there is a living room, a dining room, and a kitchen. On the second floor, there are 4 bedrooms and a bathroom. Maria answers that with that amount of rooms, she can take care of everything by herself. However, upon noticing that Takumi turned red, she asks what happened. Embarrassed, he admits that because she is so beautiful, he imagined she must be highly sought after, and therefore he did not understand why she still remained in that place. Takumi's words make Maria turn very embarrassed as well, quite timid. She answers that the only thing she knows how to do is domestic services and not other things, such as accompanying a master to bed. Realizing the misunderstanding, Takumi becomes very awkward and explains that she interpreted those words the wrong way. He would only like to hire her to take care of his house. Mulan interrupts this idle chatter and asks if, in that case, Takumi will want to have her as his slave. Takumi says that he will only accept this proposal if it is also Maria's wish. Upon hearing this, Maria demonstrates that she is very happy with the proposal. However, Mulan informs that, unfortunately, at the moment they do not have any prisoners of war available. At that instant, Maria comments that there is still Sophia, but Mulan interrupts her, asking her not to get involved in the matter and tells her to go back to the room to get ready. Next, Mulan explains that there is indeed another candidate, but she has many problems and does not meet the requirements they are looking for. Intrigued, Takumi asks if he can meet her. He feels that his intuition skill is insisting for him to go see her. Upon arriving at the woman's room, Mulan explains that she was captured 50 years ago during the War of Torialia and Yggdrasil, an elf kingdom. However, for various reasons, she never signed a contract with anyone. Takumi asks what those reasons are. Mulan reveals that the elf has an injury on her left ear, as well as difficulties moving her right arm and her left leg. Even if these limitations do not hinder her daily life, she also suffers from a blockage, which prevents her from using both spirit magic and elemental magic. For this reason, Sophia cannot act as a magic warrior. Even so, Takumi insists on speaking with her alone for a few minutes. Mulan agrees and leaves the two alone in the room. Takumi then introduces himself to the young woman, and she comments that she has already heard the entire explanation given by Mulan. At that moment, Takumi gently holds her face and analyzes all of her attributes. He becomes quite impressed when he discovers that Sophia is strong. However, the limitations in her arm and in her leg reduce all of her attributes by 100 points. Furthermore, she is cursed, which prevents her from utilizing any magical power. Upon noticing this, Takumi concludes that if he manages to heal her limbs and remove the curse, Sophia will become a very valuable person. At that instant, Mulan returns to the room. Takumi informs that he wishes to make a contract with Sophia. Mulan reminds him that she is incapable of fighting, but Takumi answers that it is enough to resolve what is preventing it. Mulan asks if he truly intends to solve a problem that has existed for 50 years. Upon noticing that Takumi is resolved, she smiles and says that this attitude is very interesting, affirming that she will be happy to have Sophia in his care. Some time later, after all the documentation is concluded, Maria reunites with them and thanks Takumi for also having hired Sophia. Next, Mulan casts a spell to officialize the contracts. As soon as the ritual finishes, the two young women inform that from that moment on they will be under Takumi's care. While observing, Mulan thinks to herself that the two girls found a truly kind master. Upon arriving at the house, Maple receives Takumi at the entrance. He warns the two girls not to be startled, explaining that Maple is his familiar. After that, Takumi shows the entire house. The two become quite impressed when they discover that each one will have her own bedroom. Furthermore, he informs that the two can use the bathtub whenever they want. Sophia answers that they will only take a bath with him. Just kidding, after him. But Takumi answers that he does not have a fixed time to bathe and adds that the bathtub possesses an artifact capable of automatically purifying the water. Therefore, there is no problem at all if they want to utilize it before him. Later, while the two are taking a bath, Maria comments to Sophia that she never imagined Mulan would allow her to leave, since no matter how much money they offered her, she had never accepted to hand her over to anyone. Sophia becomes very serious and replies that she managed to see the contracts prepared by Mulan and noticed that there was practically no information about their new master. There were no data about his house, his family, or his past. For this reason, she believes that Takumi has a very unusual situation and something important to hide, or else he is involved in something rather dark. After they finish their bath, everyone gathers for dinner. Maria complains because it was practically Takumi who prepared the entire meal. She feels quite useless, since she believes that this should be her responsibility. Takumi explains that that is only their first day in the house, and that he wanted to make them feel welcome. Furthermore, he requests that they stop calling him master, as he prefers that they call him simply by his name. The two accept the request, but become quite confused upon realizing that they are going to have dinner at the same table as him. Takumi replies that he sees no problem at all in eating beside them. He also makes it clear that he does not wish for his house to follow this rigid hierarchy between masters and servants. Sometime later, Takumi meets with Volton, who delivers to him a package that he had ordered. Later, while walking through the city, he finds a church. Upon entering the location and observing a statue, he remembers the goddess Nolan, so he kneels and thanks her for all the blessings she granted him. While praying, Takumi recalls that Nolan had previously commented that the Holy Empire of Cydonia controlled that region, so he begins to wonder why she had demonstrated so much contempt for this empire. At that instant, Nolan speaks with him. Takumi becomes quite surprised when he realizes that he was transported once again to the magical space where the deities reside. The goddess explains that, since he was praying, she took the opportunity to bring him there and answer his doubt. Nolan reveals that the Holy Empire of Cydonia has no relationship whatsoever with her. In truth, that world is divided between two religions. The first is creationism, which worships the goddess Nolan as its supreme deity. The second is the religion of the divine light, which emerged later. Since its foundation, the Empire of Cydonia has worked actively to strengthen this new religion and weaken the influence of creationism. Even though she is a goddess, Nolan explains that she prefers not to interfere in the affairs of humans. However, when the Empire of Cydonia activated the ritual for summoning people from other worlds and ended up involving individuals like Takumi, who was not even the true target of the summoning. She was forced to intervene. Before saying goodbye, Nolan gives an important warning. She explains that even though Takumi continues to count on her protection and her blessing remains with him forever, as he expands his world, meets new people, and grows, part of this blessing will end up weakening. In other words, he will leave the easy mode. Soon, Takumi will begin to fail at tasks that he previously performed with extreme ease. Furthermore, people who do not possess good intentions might also appear, making his journey much more difficult from now on. Takumi understands that up to that moment he had encountered only good people during his journey, so he realizes that this happened thanks to his blessing and the favors granted by the goddess Nolan. But from that instant on, this protection will cease to influence so many events. From here on, the direction of his life will be determined mainly by the choices he makes. Meanwhile, 1 year later, in the Holy Empire of Cydonia, the summoned heroes are undergoing intense training. The leaders of the empire comment among themselves that those heroes need to become useful. After all, it was necessary to face enormous difficulties to manage to summon them. In the beginning, many nobles were against helping them, but Elizabeth managed to convince everyone otherwise. During the training, Yamato ends up falling to the ground because of fatigue. Even so, he stands up, determined to continue fighting. At that moment, Elizabeth approaches the group and orders that the girls also participate in the training. However, one of them replies that she has no interest in violence. Elizabeth counters saying that that is not about violence, but rather about saving the world. Despite this, Akane notices that Elizabeth is not exactly the kind person she appears to be. After that, Takumi returns home. He ends up tripping over Maple, dropping everything he was carrying. Sophia tries to help him, but when she goes to pick up the package that Volton had delivered to him, Takumi gets startled, stores the object inside his item box, and asks the two girls to leave him alone for a while, because he is going to stay locked in his workshop. Meanwhile, they can take care of the house. But Sophia begins to suspect Takumi's behavior. She notices that that package possesses a magical covering and proceeds to wonder what he is hiding. She becomes curious and decides to investigate. Upon looking discreetly through the door of the workshop, she sees Takumi cutting his own arm with a knife that appears to be poisoned. Right afterward, Takumi utilizes magic to heal his own wound. At that moment, we discover that he is doing all of this solely to increase the level of his skills and his magic. Takumi comments to himself that Maria is terrible. But at that moment, Sophia invades the workshop and charges toward him, furiously asking what he intends to do with Maria. However, she is very tired. Upon checking her attributes, Takumi notices that Sophia suffers from extreme fatigue and possesses a small wound on her left hand. He begins to treat her with healing magic, but he notices that her body is resisting the spell, causing Takumi to suspect that this is related to the curse she carries. In the next scene, Sophia is already lying down resting. Maria explains to Takumi that this always happens when she exerts too much physical effort. Upon hearing this explanation, Takumi decides to heal her. For this, he utilizes the spells Dispel and Extra Heal and manages to remove the curse and restore her wounds. The power of the magic is so great that even Sophia's injured ear regenerates. Sometime later, Sophia wakes up. She is received by Maria, who asks if she is alright. Still confused, Sophia questions what she is doing in that place. Maria explains that Takumi carried her to the room, but startled, Sophia requests that she flee, affirming that that man is not who he appears to be. However, Maria answers that Takumi is an even better person than she imagined. Next, she delivers a mirror to Sophia. Upon looking at her reflection, she becomes very surprised when she realizes that she recovered her ear and also her magical power. Moved, she cannot believe what she is seeing. After that, Sophia finds Takumi. He decides to explain that, in order to manage to undo her curse, he needed to increase the level of his light magic. It was precisely for this reason that he was doing all those experiments. The liquid that Volton delivered to him was a poison extracted from an herb, and Takumi applied the poison over his own wounds to gain experience and raise the level of his skill. But, in the end, he ended up evolving when he healed the wound on Sophia's hand, which allowed him to learn how to utilize extra heal magic. Sophia asks why he called Maria cruel. A bit embarrassed, Takumi answers that it was because she threw away the medicinal herbs, believing it was just garbage. Without understanding, Sophia asks why he risked his own life so much. Takumi just recalls that he had promised to find a solution for her curse. Upon hearing these words, Sophia kneels and declares her full name, Sophia Sylphid, swearing eternal loyalty to her master Takumi. Meanwhile, Nolan observes everything from a distance. Right after, she shifts her attention to Midgard, 1 year in the future. On the following day, Takumi is in the library and demonstrates a certain disappointment upon realizing that in such a large library there exist only 4 books about alchemy. He wonders why no one is interested in a knowledge that appears so simple to him, but soon notices that those books were written in the ancient language of the magical civilization. At that moment, he understands that upon reincarnating in that world, he received from Nolan the blessing of understanding all existing languages. Upon returning home, Maria comments that she saw the 2 of them the previous night and mentions that it was spectacular. According to her, Sophia looks like a true knight, swearing loyalty to her princess. A comment that makes Takumi joke, saying that he ended up in the role of the princess. Sometime later, we see the group working on the manufacturing of toilet. Takumi comments that after finishing that batch, he intends to end production to begin creating other inventions. However, he confesses that his true dream is to travel the world in search of new landscapes, ancient ruins, and unique materials, as well as simply enjoying the adventure and having fun. Takumi comments that should he truly decide to travel, Sophia will go with him to ensure his protection, while Maria stays at the mansion taking care of the house. But at that moment, Maria asks if there is any problem accompanying them as well. Takumi answers that the journey can be very dangerous. Upon hearing this, Maria begins to dramatize the situation, saying that she would be like an abandoned toilet in the middle of a desert, all alone in that massive mansion. The comparison makes Takumi feel guilty. After all, it truly would be worrying to leave Maria alone in such a large house. Even so, she continues insisting, making an adorable puppy face to convince him. In the face of their insistence, Takumi decides to analyze Maria's attributes and skills. To his surprise, he discovers that she is not just an ordinary maid, but rather a true combat maid. At that moment, Sophia interrupts the 2 and says that she would very much like Maria to travel with them. She herself would take the responsibility of training her, teaching her both combat techniques and magic. Convinced by the arguments of the 2, Takumi accepts the idea. Right after, he decides to manufacture weapons and armor for both of them. Upon asking what type of weapons they prefer, Sophia answers that she would like a very long sword, a spear, and a bow, demonstrating that she knows exactly what she wants. Maria explains that at the Mulan company she used to train using daggers. Therefore, she would like to continue utilizing daggers or knives. However, Sophia recommends that she also carry a spear, since daggers might not be as effective against monsters. Sometime later, while Sophia begins to train Maria, Takumi works at the forge crafting the weapons for the 2. For this, he utilizes magical ores, which possess a performance far superior to ordinary materials. When he finishes the work, his blacksmithing skill increases considerably in level. Furthermore, he customizes each weapon with an exclusive emblem. Maria's receives the symbol of a small flame, while Sophia's gains the pattern of a house. As a final touch, Takumi enchants all the weapons with magic and self-repair. Next, he begins to think about how he will manufacture the armor. While imagining the ideal equipment for each one, he ends up fantasizing about Maria carrying daggers fastened to her thighs, which makes her shudder without understanding what is happening. After that, Takumi realizes that he needs to take the measurements of the 2 to manufacture custom-made armor, but he is left not knowing how to approach such an embarrassing request. Then he remembers something he had prepared before, and takes out from his item box 2 mannequins identical to the girls, which will serve as a model to produce the equipment, without causing any embarrassment. Soon we see the 2 very suspicious mannequins. They are identical to the girls. While he observes the models attentively to finish the project, Maple notices his behavior and asks, suspicious, if those poses are not a bit indecent. Takumi becomes very nervous and tries to change the subject, asking her to deliver a bit of silk to him. Next, while finalizing the design of the armor, he decides to utilize the materials obtained from the boar, along together with the silk provided by Maple. Taking advantage of his privileges as master, he resolves to create armor exactly the way he considers ideal for the 2. Several days later, upon finishing the work, Takumi cries with emotion when he sees how perfect the 2 suits of armor look on the girls. Sophia becomes quite surprised and asks how he managed to get the measurements right with such precision. Since the clothes appear to have been made to measure, Takumi just gives a smile and decides to keep this professional secret. After trying on the weapons as well, both Sophia and Maria are very satisfied with the result. Furthermore, Takumi delivers a ring to each one of them. These rings will serve to facilitate the activation of their magics. Upon receiving the gift, Sophia comments that Takumi is doing too much for them and that he must have expended a large quantity of magical power to manage to manufacture all those items. However, he answers that it was nothing special, quite the contrary. Manufacturing equipment also helps him to level up. and thanks to this process, he ended up learning new magics of the ice and lightning element. Sometime later, the three proceed to the Adventurers Guild, because before initiating the journey, Takumi needs to register Sophia and Maria as adventurers. After concluding the registration, the receptionist informs that the two received rank H. Next, Takumi requests that everyone be officially registered as a single group, and right after, they walk over to the mission board to look for a suitable job. While they analyze the available requests, a group of arrogant adventurers approaches the girls. They begin to provoke them, saying that they should abandon Takumi and join their group because they are much stronger than that skinny guy. In the face of the provocation, Takumi decides to confront them. Despite being terrified inside, he knows that he cannot allow them to disrespect either him or his companions. One of the bullies tries to hit him with a punch, but Takumi utilizes his physical enhancement magic. As a result, the one who ends up suffering is the idiot himself, breaking his arm upon striking Takumi. Right after, a guildmaster appears to interrupt the confusion and asks if it was Takumi who caused that injury. Maria tries to defend him and explain what truly happened, but the guildmaster affirms that he only believes in concrete facts, and the only visible fact at that moment is that the adventurer with the broken arm is precisely the bully. Fortunately, the receptionist intervenes, explaining to the guildmaster that Takumi did nothing wrong and takes the opportunity to introduce him to the guildmaster named Baraki. After that, Baraki takes Takumi to his office and asks what exactly happened during the fight. Takumi gets a bit nervous, not knowing what to answer, but Baraki reassures him that everything said will remain confidential. At that moment, the receptionist asks if what Takumi utilized was some type of magic. The question is surprising, because if the young man managed to perceive any trace of magic, it means he possesses a very high level of magic detection. Takumi explains that, in truth, he did not utilize magic directly during the blow. What he did was remove a piece of charcoal from his item box and cover the upper part of his body before receiving the punch. Intrigued, the receptionist asks if it was just ordinary charcoal. A bit embarrassed, Takumi admits that he transformed the charcoal into diamond. Upon hearing this, Baraki understands why the aggressor ended up breaking his own arm upon attacking him. With the misunderstanding cleared up, the receptionist suggests that Takumi and his party receive rank D, as this way they would cease to be bothered by arrogant adventurers. However, Takumi replies that they had just registered that very same day, and he does not consider it fair to receive such a large promotion without merit. In the face of this, the receptionist proposes delivering missions that allow for a rapid rise in rank. Sophia comments that she thinks this idea is excellent, and in the end, Takumi agrees. After that, the group is already fulfilling the missions. The first consists of hunting goblins, the second of eliminating kobolds, and the third of gathering marlow herbs. While they advance through the forest, Maple detects the position of some goblins. Wasting no time, Sophia eliminates 2 of them, while Takumi and Maria defeat the other 2. After the battle, Takumi comments to the girls that he finds it strange that they encountered so many monsters in a short time. They have already defeated enough goblins to conclude that mission 3 times over. Sophia replies that perhaps a goblin settlement exists nearby, led by a goblin general, a rank C monster. According to her, normally at least 5 parties of adventurers of rank D or higher would be necessary to eliminate a village under the command of such a creature. Even so, Sophia believes that by combining her spirit magic, Takumi's elemental magic, and Maria's earth magic, they would be capable of eliminating a large number of enemies right in the initial attack. While the two discuss combat strategies, Takumi merely laments the direction the situation is taking. At that instant, Maple begins to act in a strange manner and warns Takumi that she believes she is about to evolve, so he soon opens up a space so that she can rest during the evolution, leaving Maria and Sophia quite surprised upon seeing that Takumi is capable of utilizing such a rare skill. Takumi explains to the girls that he can now create a subspace with great ease, thanks to the increase in his space-time magic level. With Maple resting during her evolution, the group will need to continue without her for now. Even so, Sophia and Maria are determined. They want to eliminate all the goblins, so they proceed to the monster base and initiate a powerful combined attack, uniting their different magics to devastate the camp. Despite defeating a large number of enemies, the battle is still far from over. Soon the goblin general emerges, accompanied by several goblin knights. While Sophia confronts the knights, Takumi takes on the fight against the goblin general. During the combat, His evolution continues at an absurd pace, increasing in level with practically every movement performed, making his progression more and more impressive. After winning the battle, the party returns exhausted to the Adventurers Guild. As soon as they arrive, Hans requests that they accompany him to the back of the guild, as they need to report the incident to Guildmaster Baraki. The master is in disbelief when he discovers that only those 3 adventurers managed to defeat a group of monsters that would normally require the participation of several teams of a much higher ranking. While everyone is still trying to process this feat, Maple returns from her subspace after concluding her evolution. She has now assumed a new form, becoming an arachne. Right after, Hans informs that as a reward for the excellent performance, Takumi was promoted to rank E, while Sophia and Maria passed to rank F some time later, already back at the mansion. Maria asks Takumi if he possesses some leftover pieces of fabric. He replies that she could simply ask Maple for thread, but Maria refuses, explaining that the threads produced by her are valuable and too precious to be used in such a manner. A bit embarrassed, Maria reveals that she usually sews underwear for herself and for Sophia, showing Takumi a design that she had in mind. Upon seeing the sketch, Takumi decides to create a much more elaborate and elegant model. When Maria observes the new design, she becomes very embarrassed. Takumi has no idea where to put his face, but even with embarrassment, Maria admits that she truly liked the project and requests that he be the one to manufacture the pieces. At that moment, Maple arrives warning that Thomas has just appeared at the mansion. When he meets him, Takumi notices that he is passed out. After recovering, he admits that he got a fright when he came across Maple's new evolved form. As soon as he composes himself, he shares why he visited them. The Lord of Volton, named Geeton, wishes to meet with Takumi, likely to manage to speak about his purification artifact, meaning the toilets that he created. Takumi recalls that he had previously commented that securing a sponsor would prevent the Holy Empire of Cydonia from interfering in his affairs, but there is nothing to be done, so he proceeds to the meeting with the Marquis. During the conversation, the noble explains that the purification artifact created by Takumi is an extraordinary invention, capable of significantly improving the hygiene of the city and, consequently, preventing epidemics and various diseases among the population. Next, he sincerely thanks Takumi, leaving him quite surprised. To him, it made no sense for the lord of those lands to bow before someone like him. However, the Marquis explains that if an invention is capable of improving the life of all his people, he sees no problem at all in demonstrating his gratitude in whatever form is necessary. Furthermore, the Marquis also thanks Takumi and his party for having eliminated the goblin horde that had escaped the vigilance of the Knights of the Kingdom. He then makes a very important recommendation, saying that Takumi must prioritize his own safety above all else. Should something happen to him, it would not be only Volton that would suffer the consequences, but, possibly, the entire kingdom. The Marquis also reveals that the Holy Empire of Cydonia may try to interfere in the region at any moment, so he must always remain attentive. After the meeting, Takumi returns home, where Maple delivers the fabric that he had requested previously. Upon seeing it, Takumi remembers that he still needs to manufacture the underwear he promised to make for Sophia and for Maria. After 3 whole days of work, he finishes the pieces. The effort was very great, and he became quite exhausted, but, in compensation, his sewing skill evolved to level 6, and he hopes to see how it turned out on them. The girls are delighted with the result. Then Takumi asks if they would like to try on the clothes at that moment. As soon as the words leave his mouth, he realizes how inappropriate that sounded, and he apologizes. To his surprise, Sophia and Maria ask if he would truly like to see them wearing those pieces, saying that if that is his wish, they can try them on. Just imagining this situation already causes Takumi to panic. Embarrassed, he flees running like a true coward. It is what I always say, everyone, meat only falls on a vegan's plate. After Takumi leaves, Maria comments in a joking tone that he is quite fearful. A bit embarrassed, Sophia agrees and replies that Takumi truly is quite a coward. Meanwhile, alone in his room, Takumi tries to convince himself that he needs to be stronger so as not to end up giving in to temptations. His imagination begins to play a trick on him. A mental little devil appears provoking him and asks if he would not like to see that underwear in person. Horrified by his own thought, Takumi lets out a scream and does everything to push that temptation away. Sometime later, Takumi concludes another of his projects and manufactures 3 refrigerators. Sophia and Maria are impacted by the invention. The greatest differentiator is not only the capacity to preserve food, but also the fact that the interior is quite cold. Takumi explains that he built the appliances utilizing a special iron alloy mixed with other ores and, after molding the structure, installed a device powered by refrigeration magic. Maria becomes very happy. Now she will be able to cook, always utilizing fresh ingredients. After deciding which of the refrigerators will remain in the mansion, Takumi announces that he is already prepared to initiate his next major project. He wants to develop even better equipment for himself and for his companions. Takumi decides to initiate this new project because, after the battle against the Goblin Horde, he realized that possessing state-of-the-art equipment would be essential to face even greater challenges in the future. As his blacksmithing and alchemy levels increased once more, he intends to manufacture a new set utilizing two rare materials, mithril and adamantite. Sometime later, Takumi goes to the Adventurers Guild to seek information. Hans explains that both mithril and adamantite are far too rare ores, and that there is hardly any blacksmith in Volton capable of working with them. But should he be lucky, perhaps he will find a skilled artisan in the dwarf kingdom called Non-Style. Right after, Hans remembers that Takumi is also an alchemist and comments that perhaps it would be even better if he produced his equipment himself. For this, it is enough to obtain the raw material in a village located northwest of the kingdom of Barkula, where a mine rich in mithril and adamantite exists. Hans gives an important warning. Only members of the Blacksmiths Guild have authorization to enter that mine. Despite this, there is a way to bypass this rule. If Takumi accepts a mission to eliminate the monsters that infest the location, he will be able to enter the mine freely while he is performing this work. At that moment, the guildmaster interrupts the conversation and informs that the stocks of treant wood in Volton are almost depleted. At this time of year, most adventurers are busy hunting black buffaloes, which causes few people to gather treant wood. Consequently, the reserves decrease. At least the wooden monsters that provide this material live in the Forest of Death, exactly on the path that Takumi will need to travel to the mine. For this reason, the guildmaster hopes that he can resolve several problems in a single trip. Even with a little fear, Takumi accepts the mission. The guildmaster takes advantage of the opportunity and reveals that a blacksmith is also looking for an adventurer to escort him on this same journey and would like to deliver this service to Takumi. The boy answers that he has never worked as an escort and suggests that the mission be given to the lion's main party. But the master explains that they are already busy with another job and makes an expression of someone begging for help, trying to convince Takumi to accept this task. Finally, Takumi is informed that the journey to the destination takes about 7 days riding an ordinary horse. Should he utilize a monstrous horse, the route would be reduced to only 4 days. The problem was that only ordinary horses remained available. At that moment, Thomas appears at the guild. He was hunting black buffaloes, but needed to return to the city to deliver the meat before it spoiled. Even so, he warns that he will depart again the following day to meet up again with Rio and the rest of the group. Then, Takumi invites him to spend the night at his house, take a bath, and rest before continuing the journey. Thomas likes the idea and accepts the invitation. After that, they meet with Thomas, who informs Takumi that the company will lend a carriage along together with a monstrous horse to facilitate his journey. In exchange, she makes only 2 requests, wanting Takumi to sell some materials to the company in large quantities, and that, when he returns, he produce many other refrigerators. Takumi accepts the deal, but recommends that Thomas stop opening and closing the refrigerator all the time. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Sophia begins to become worried about Takumi's delay. She thinks that perhaps she should have insisted on accompanying him to ensure his safety. During the night, on the way back to the mansion, Takumi and Thomas comment that they did not manage to find any blacksmith specialized in working with mithril and adamantite. However, while they are walking, Thomas senses a hostile presence approaching. He realizes that he does not have suitable equipment to confront an unknown enemy. He holds Takumi and tries to flee. Before they manage to escape, the two are attacked. Soon, they discover that the mysterious hooded person was, in truth, Sophia. Upon seeing Thomas holding Takumi, she believed that he was attacking her master and charged forward. Before the situation ended in tragedy, Takumi calms them down and explains everything that had happened. After hearing the explanation, Sophia apologizes to Thomas, who answers that there is no reason to worry. When they arrive at the mansion, Thomas looks around impressed and asks Takumi what all that is. Takumi explains that he hired those girls to take care of the house and also for his protection. Next, Thomas notices that Maple evolved and comments that she became very beautiful. But the response is not friendly at all. Maple simply says that she hates him. Thomas begins to lament the fact that Takumi is living surrounded by women. Takumi makes it clear that none of them is his girlfriend. Things that only a coward who does not take care of his own ladies would say. Said and done, Thomas resolves to try his own luck and begins to flirt with Sophia and Maria to see if either of them demonstrates interest. However, the two clarify that they decided to dedicate their lives to serving Takumi, putting an end to his hopes. Sometime later, while Real cries alone during his bath because of his romantic failure, Takumi explains to the girls all the details of the missions he is going to perform on the trip. Early the next morning, Real says goodbye to everyone and leaves to reunite with his companions. Before traveling, Takumi decides to finish the new equipment for his female companions, but ends up consuming practically all of his energy by transforming a huge greatsword into a smaller sword, which is much more practical to use. In addition, he grants the weapon a special ability capable of absorbing the magic of enemies and utilizing it to strengthen the sword itself during combat. After 3 days of exhaustive work, Takumi concludes the preparations for the trip. Next, he meets the client he is supposed to escort during the journey and greets him, saying that it will be a pleasure to travel by his side. After some small talk, the group departs toward the new adventure. Meanwhile, at the Adventurers Guild, Hans informs the guildmaster that, according to the reports coming from the city of Horus, the monsters of the Forest of Death are much more active than usual. This means that Takumi and his companions will run a much greater risk during the mission. At the same time, Papik meets with the king's butler, who informs that the problem with the sewage system has been solved thanks to Takumi's inventions. However, there is a greater concern. The news about these inventions spread greatly and reached the Holy Empire of Sidonia earlier than expected. Now, the Empire has already started asking questions and demonstrating interest in the person responsible for these technologies. Meanwhile, in the Holy Empire of Sidonia, several months after Takumi's departure, the supposed summoned heroes continue training intensely. Everything indicates that they are being prepared to participate in a great war that is approaching. Returning to Takumi's group, he notifies Gambo that he intends to take advantage of the trip to hunt some Trins, the wooden monsters responsible for the production of Trint wood. Gambo agrees to do this and explains that the guild had already informed him about this additional mission. Sometime later, already inside the Forest of Death, Sophia alerts Takumi to utilize his magic detection ability. This way, he will manage to identify the Trins that disguise themselves as ordinary trees. The strategy works perfectly. They locate the first monster and defeat it. But immediately afterward, a huge group of Trins surrounds the group. Takumi, Sophia, and Maria use their strength and begin to utilize their magic in perfect synchronicity, defeating the monsters one after another. But soon a much more powerful enemy emerges, an Elder Trin. Unlike the others, it possesses an incredible regeneration capacity. Sophia explains that the only way to defeat it is to destroy its main body with a single, decisive blow. Hearing this, Takumi envelops his sword with fire magic and launches a powerful attack at the core of the monster. The blow is enough to defeat the Elder Trin all at once. Takumi rises several levels after the battle and also obtains the extremely rare fruits of the Elder Trin, an item that is quite difficult to find. After some travel time, the group arrives at the city of Horus. At the local Adventurers Guild, Gambo advises Takumi to accept the mission to eliminate the iron moles, monsters that feed on the ores of the mine. Since these creatures are considered natural enemies of mining, any adventurer tasked with eliminating them receives authorization to enter the mine freely during the mission. After that, already exploring the interior of the mine, Takumi finds large quantities of mithril and adamantite by pure luck. However, the peace lasts shortly. They feel a strong tremor and realize that it is the iron moles, causing everyone to prepare for combat. In the end, as one of the creatures emerges from the ground, Takumi utilizes light magic and blinds the monster. Next, he asks Sophia to finish off the enemy. Gambo asks how Takumi had that idea. He simply responds that since the moles live their entire lives in darkness, he imagined that an intense light would be their greatest weakness. He was right. Everyone is impressed with the ease with which Takumi defeated the monster. Maria only comments that the poor mole spent its entire life hidden underground and ended up being defeated without even understanding what happened. After some time, the group manages to extract a large quantity of ores without facing further difficulties. Upon returning to Volton, Takumi goes directly to Gambo's workshop and asks him to teach him the basics of smelting and the forging of alloys made with mithril and adamantite. After a long and elaborate forging process that took many days of work, Takumi manages to manufacture armor utilizing an alloy of mithril and adamantite, filled with magical bonuses that increase their capabilities. To demonstrate the efficiency of the new armor, Takumi activates his speed increase ability. But since he is still not used to the enormous gain in performance, he ends up losing control and crashes violently against a wall. Sophia and Maria witness everything, but pretend they saw absolutely nothing to avoid embarrassing him even further. Next, Takumi delivers the new weapons he prepared for his companions. Maria receives a spear named Explode, while Sophia gains another spear baptized as Tempest. They are grateful for the gifts. Sophia says that if one day Takumi is in danger, she will give her own life to protect him. For this reason, she would like to request that he manufacture a sturdy shield for her. Takumi responds that he sees no problem at all in doing that, but makes a single request in return, that Sophia starts to value her own life more. Meanwhile, in another place, Nolan observes with dissatisfaction the state of the summoned heroes. Their swords are covered in blood, making it evident that their training has become increasingly brutal. In the castle of the Holy Empire of Sidonia, the heroes receive the news that very soon they will depart toward the kingdom of Samandor. At that moment, it becomes clear that all of them have developed a posture much colder, darker, and more intimidating than when they were summoned. About a year before these events, Takumi finishes manufacturing the shield requested by Sophia. The work requires so much effort that he becomes exhausted. Upon seeing him in that state, Sophia feels a strong desire to be able to help him in his workshop to alleviate some of the weight of all that work. Meanwhile, the king receives a letter sent by the Holy Empire of Sidonia. Despite being written with polite and diplomatic words, the message is clearly a threat. The empire demands that the kingdom take measures regarding the purification magic developed by Takumi. At the same time, the king receives a messenger sent by the Pope. During the meeting, the emissary explains that the Church of Divine Light submitted a formal complaint to the Pope of the Holy Empire of Sidonia. According to the Church, light magic was granted by God exclusively to the Divine Light. Therefore, the purification magic should also be under its religious authority. For this reason, they demand that the Kingdom of Barkula hand over to the Church both the patent and the magic circle responsible for the purification magic. The King of Barkula responds very calmly that if God really granted this power exclusively to the Church of Divine Light, then the Church itself should be perfectly capable of developing its own purification magic circles, without needing to appropriate someone else's creation. Upon realizing that the king does not intend to yield to the demands, the messenger becomes very indignant. He speaks right to the king's face that it is unacceptable to use a sacred purification magic in simple restrooms. For this reason, he demands that the creator of this technology be handed over to the empire. Even in the face of the threat, the king refuses the demand without showing any hesitation. Surprised by the response, the emissary warns that should Barkula continue refusing to cooperate, the Pope will order the withdrawal of all priests from the kingdom. Even so, the king maintains his calm and responds that they can do whatever they want and take all the priests they wish, as this represents no problem at all for the kingdom. Some time later, at Takumi's house, he talks with Papik and demonstrates concern. He asks if it really was a good idea to challenge the Holy Empire of Sidonia in such a direct manner. Papik asks him to rest assured and explains that Barkula does not possess only a single official religion. Besides the Church of Divine Light, there is also creationism, a religion that venerates the Deusa Nolan. Takumi becomes curious and asks which deity is worshipped by the Church of Divine Light. Papik responds that he believes it to be an entity named Anadi. Next, he explains that Barkula guarantees religious freedom for the entire population, which is why there are still many followers of the old creationism. He also comments that the priests of this religion charge very low amounts to perform healings, while the priests of the Divine Light demand high sums for the same services. In addition, the Holy Empire of Sidonia acts as a great sponsor and protector of the Church of Divine Light. To conclude the matter, Papik changes the subject and makes one more request to Takumi. A bit embarrassed for already having requested the manufacturing of toilets and refrigerators, he explains that now the king himself wishes to meet him personally and ordered that Takumi be brought to the capital. Papik says that he is not obligated to accept the invitation, but makes such a pleading expression that he ends up convincing Takumi. Sometime later, Takumi gathers Sophia and Maria to tell them the news. He explains that everyone will travel to Vaculados, the capital of the kingdom of Barkula, as the king protected him from the interference attempts of the Holy Empire of Sidonia. Refusing a personal invitation would be a lack of manners. Takumi informs them that the trip will take place within a week. Utilizing magic horses, the journey should last about 7 days. Maria gets excited about the opportunity to visit the capital. Takumi reveals another of his plans, to manufacture new robes for Sophia and Maria. Papik handed him a shadow stone, a material capable of blocking the perception of people around. Incorporating this stone into the clothes, they will be able to better conceal their presence during combats and also avoid drawing the attention of criminals while they are circulating through the capital. A short time later, Sophia and Maria go out to buy all the necessary materials for the trip and for the making of the new robes. Meanwhile, Takumi proceeds to the church to enter into contact with Nolan. As soon as he appears before the goddess, Nolan complains, asking if he could not at least have brought some offering. Having brought absolutely nothing, Takumi ignores the complaint and asks if Anadi, the deity worshipped by the Church of Divine Light, is a goddess different from her. Nolan responds that she is the only goddess in existence. Intrigued, Takumi then asks who or what Anadi is. Nolan only responds that he will find that out very soon and, demonstrating a certain jealousy and distrust, asks why he is so interested in this subject. Takumi explains that his concern exists because he feels that the Holy Empire of Sidonia is approaching closer and closer. As Nolan had told him previously that he would lose his divine option, he imagined that perhaps all this movement of the Empire was related to that. However, Nolan responds that this is not the reason. She explains that Takumi ended up winding up in Mildgard precisely because of Sidonia, but that this has no relation at all to the divine blessings. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Takumi asks about the heroes who were summoned. Nolan reveals a surprising piece of information. Upon sending him to Mildgard, she interfered with the timeline. In reality, Takumi was sent to a period that happens 1 year before the summoning of the heroes. This means that there are still some months left before they appear in that world. He becomes quite surprised and asks why she sent him 1 year before the other heroes. Nolan clarifies that she does not intend to reveal anything more. Before he manages to insist, she simply expels him from her divine realm. Meanwhile, about 10 months later in the timeline of the heroes, they continue evolving more and more during their training. Returning now to the period in which Takumi is, he delivers to Sophia and Maria new robes practically identical to his own. The two become enchanted with the gift immediately after. Takumi proceeds to his workshop with the intention of constructing a carriage. Since the trip to the capital will be long, traveling with more comfort seems like the best option. The only problem is that they will still need to rent the horses at the guild. At that moment, Maria comments that the city of Volton received this name because besides being close to the Forest of Death, it is also surrounded by diverse monster habitats. Sophia decides to set out in search of a dragon horse. During the way, Sophia and Maria explain that these creatures are visually very similar to common horses, but possess a large horn resembling that of a rhinoceros and their entire body covered by scales, in addition to being much faster than magic horses. While they cross the forest, Sophia notices something strange and enters into a combat stance. A bush wolf emerges from among the trees, but simply passes by the group without attacking them. Takumi believes that this probably happened thanks to the effect of the Shadow Stone, which blocks the perception of monsters. Even so, Sophia makes it a point to fight a little to train. She removes her robe and faces a wild boar, defeating the creature. Next, Maria takes advantage of the meat of the animal. After that, they find the carcass of a trin. Takumi and Sophia take advantage of the opportunity to gather its wood, since it will be utilized in the construction of the carriage. Meanwhile, Maple is so excited to find a dragon horse that she cannot wait any longer and goes out alone to search. While she continued searching for a dragon horse, Maple comes across a huge group of carcasses of trins scattered across the ground. Upon advancing a little further, she finds a gravely injured dragon horse. When she tries to approach to help it, the creature reacts and attacks out of pure instinct of defense. At that moment, Maple remembers the occasion when Takumi saved her and tries to reassure the animal, saying that her master is an incredible person, and that he will certainly manage to heal it. Before she manages to convince it, several giant ants emerge behind her. Maple eliminates the first ones, but soon notices that a huge group of ants is surrounding both of them. Without another way out, she utilizes her threads to create a large protective dome around them. Despite this, she knows that the barrier will not hold out for very long. Maple tries to enter into telepathic contact with Takumi, but receives no response. She ends up concluding that Takumi must have become so excited gathering wood that he simply forgot about her. Convinced that that would be her end, she screams as loud as she can, calling her master an idiot. At that instant, Takumi appears and gently touches her head, desperate and relieved at the same time. Maple runs to hug him, complaining that she tried to call him several times. Takumi explains that he could not hear her messages because the magic dome created by her blocked the communication. When they lost contact with Maple, he and the girls became worried and went out to search for her. Next, he praises her, saying that she did an excellent job protecting herself and the dragon horse immediately after. Everyone notices the huge injured creature before them. Maple implores for Takumi to save the dragon horse. He tries to approach to heal it, but the animal, even while practically unconscious, continues to react instinctively, refusing any approach. Sophia alerts that many other monsters are approaching, even in the face of danger. Maple insists that they cannot abandon the dragon horse in that state. Heeding her request, Takumi decides to open a subspace and sends both Maple and the dragon horse to that safe location, allowing everyone to escape from the attack of the monster. Sophia alerts that this is dangerous. Keeping a high-level monster inside a subspace without possessing a magic pact with it imposes a gigantic burden upon Takumi's body. Because of this, he begins to feel the effects of this overload, and the girls become worried upon noticing that Takumi has already been sleeping for more than 12 hours. While he remains unconscious, the dragon horse remains trapped inside the subspace, which maintains an enormous consumption of energy upon his body. Maple has still not opened the passage to remove it, as she believes that the animal remains frightened. But if it remains there for much longer, Takumi runs a serious risk of life. Determined to help him, Sophia holds Takumi's hand and upon kissing it, utilizes her magic to enter into contact with Maple. She explains that if the dragon horse does not leave the subspace, Takumi will remain unconscious and recommends that Maple create once again a protective dome around the animal, exactly as she had done in the forest, so that it does not panic when it leaves that dimension. After transmitting the message, Sophia prepares to go out in search of the necessary medicines to treat the injuries of the dragon horse. Maria stops her, saying that she should remain by Takumi's side, while she herself will get all the necessary medication. Some time later, Takumi awakens and thanks Sophia for everything that she and the others did while he was unconscious. Next, the moment comes to take care of the dragon horse. Upon entering the dome alongside Maple, Takumi talks calmly with the animal and asks if, just as happened with Maple, it would also accept becoming his companion at this instant. The domestication window appears before him. Takumi tries to establish a bond and manages to form a pact with the dragon horse. Immediately after, he utilizes the skill heal to cure all of its injuries. As soon as it recovers its strength, the power of the dragon horse itself undoes the dome created by Maple. Maple becomes curious and asks what the name of the new companion will be. Takumi decides to name it Camellia. He explains that he chose the name Maple for her because of the maple leaf-shaped mark that she possesses, while the dragon horse will receive the name Camellia because this plant maintains its leaves throughout the entire year and produces beautiful red and white flowers. The girls love the chosen name. Maple approaches Camellia and tells it that she was also gravely injured when she met Takumi in the forest. Thanks to him, she managed to survive and found a home. Now the same master has also saved Camellia's life. Sometime later, the story changes focus and introduces a girl from the Beastman race named Riva. She possesses an exceptional talent for magic and is trying to find a family or someone to adopt her. However, she ends up being rejected. Despite a beast girl with such magic aptitude being something rare, the man responsible for the selection looks for someone capable of generating immediate results, and the person is not willing to wait for her development. Later, the person responsible for the orphanage tries to comfort her, telling Riva not to lose hope, as soon an excellent master willing to adopt her will appear. When she is left alone in her room, she begins to cry. For many years, the director of Volton repeats exactly the same words, but nothing changes. She recalls the promise she made to her younger brother. As soon as she managed to get a good job, she would send plenty of money to help him. Unfortunately, up to that moment, she still has not managed to find any opportunity. Meanwhile, Takumi continues totally concentrated on his alchemy work, as usual. The next day, Sophia and Maria demonstrate concern for his health, since Papik asked him to manufacture more refrigerators and produce a large quantity of potions. Takumi has practically not rested. Even so, he guarantees that he is perfectly fine, and after reassuring them, he proceeds to Gambo's workshop. Some time later, upon arriving at the guild, Takumi notices that everyone is quite agitated. Without understanding the reason, he asks the receptionist what happened. The employee explains that several people claim to have seen a monster circulating around the outskirts of the city. However, despite the countless reports, nobody managed to confirm the information, since up to that moment no concrete evidence had been found, but, at least, up to that moment, it had not caused any damage to anyone. Next, he asks what Takumi went to do at the guild. Takumi responds that he wishes to register a new familiar or companion. At that time, the dragon horse leaves the subspace. The receptionist turns pale, alternating his gaze between the animal and the composite sketch. He realizes that the creature described by all the witnesses was precisely Takumi's dragon horse, with Maple mounted on its back. In view of the situation, the guildmaster asks Takumi to accompany him to clarify the whole story. Meanwhile, in another place, Sophia recalls a conversation she had with Mulan. On the occasion, Sophia had asked for a slave with very specific characteristics. However, Mulan explained that she did not possess anyone who met her requirement. Even so, she promised to enter into contact with partners and allied merchants to try to find someone suitable. Before concluding the conversation, Mulan comments that Sophia changed quite a bit since she began to live alongside Takumi. At that moment, Maria appears and asks if she has already finished all her tasks. Since everything was already ready, the two proceed together to the market to buy ingredients and supplies to prepare a good meal for Takumi. They know that when he begins to manufacture or invent something, he gets so excited that many times he even forgets to eat. Sophia comments that she would like to be able to help him much more, but unfortunately she understands nothing about alchemy. Maria responds that it is precisely for this reason that she wishes to dedicate herself more and more to cooking, to at least take care of his nourishment. Sophia offers to help her in the kitchen, but Maria refuses on the spot, saying that if she cooked together, everything would end up in complete chaos. Sophia herself becomes a bit embarrassed, but admits that this would probably be true. Sometime later, the two arrive at Gambo's workshop and find Takumi asleep. Gambo explains that that stubborn man works practically without resting, day after day. As he sees Takumi so happy while creating his inventions, he ends up not having the courage to force him to stop. Even so, he admits that if he continues at this pace, one day he will end up fainting from exhaustion for real. After much effort, Takumi concludes the construction of the carriage. When Sophia and Maria see it for the first time, they are marveled. On the outside, it seems just like an ordinary carriage, but upon entering, they discover that its interior is practically an entire house. Takumi had enchanted the vehicle with space expansion magic, creating an internal space much larger than its external size would allow. Admired, Sophia comments that nobody in the entire continent possesses a carriage as extraordinary as that one. The trip begins, and the carriage constructed by Takumi surpasses all expectations, even traveling at a very high speed. Those who are inside practically do not feel any impact or swaying. Impressed with the result, Takumi asks Maria what she thinks could still be improved. After thinking a little, she suggests installing metal plates on the sides to transform the vehicle into a true combat carriage. During the long journey, it is also revealed that the group is being escorted by the members of the Lion's Fang. This escort happens because Godwin decided to accompany the trip to the capital. At a certain moment, Papek asks for permission to get to know the interior of the carriage. As soon as he enters, he lets out a huge scream of astonishment. Takumi becomes worried and runs to see what happened. But Papek begins to make a shower of questions. Without even waiting for a complete response, he asks if Takumi really constructed that carriage alone. Next, he says that he will pay any necessary amount to possess an identical carriage, whatever it costs. The scandal of Papek is interrupted when Godwin gives a light slap to his head so that he calms down. He congratulates Takumi for the extraordinary creation and admits that as the lord of a territory, he would love to travel in a carriage of that level. The hint is quite clear. He also wants one. Godwin offers 100 platinum coins to anyone who constructs an identical carriage for him. Takumi does the conversion of the value in his mind and realizes that the offer equates to approximately 1 billion yen. Sometime later, the group continues proceeding toward the royal capital. During the trip, Godwin comments that Takumi was already important for the development of his lands and believes that he will continue contributing even more in the future. However, he also gives a warning. Talented people end up drawing a lot of attention, and for that reason he intends to protect him from bad influences within the kingdom of Barkula. Unfortunately, he admits that he cannot control the actions of other countries, especially those of the Holy Empire of Sidonia. Meanwhile, several months ahead in the timeline in relation to Takumi, the story shows Akane in the Holy Empire of Sidonia. She is reading the Bible of the official religion of the empire. which states that the goddess Enadi created all human beings in her image and likeness, as well as the races of beastmen and dwarves. Akane stands up, approaches a servant, and irritatedly holds the necklace she is wearing. Meanwhile, in Takumi's present, the group arrives at the royal capital. Takumi celebrates that they have concluded the trip in safety, and without suffering any damage during the course. However, one of the members of the Lion's Fang responds in a joking tone, asking how they could have suffered any problem when Sophia and Maria eliminated all the monsters that appeared along the way, before they even represented any threat. In addition, Maple and the Dragon Horse are practically invincible. Papik calls Takumi to converse in private when they arrive at the inn. During the conversation, Papik explains that after discussing the matter with Godwin, they believe that presenting a carriage like that one to the king would be the best way to demonstrate Takumi's true talent. In case he manages to do this, his audience with the king will happen within 5 days. Papik recognizes that the deadline is short and suggests that Takumi leave the project for when he returns to Volton. However, Takumi responds that it will not be necessary to wait. He brought sufficient materials to construct another carriage right there. The only problem would be finding a suitable location to work, but Papik says that he can resolve this matter. Later, Takumi gathers with the girls. Takumi explains that he will go to the Palm Company, a slave enterprise belonging to an acquaintance of Papik. There, they will make available an appropriate space so that he can construct the new carriage. Sophia comments that Mulan had already told her that the Palm Company possesses an excellent reputation in the capital. After exchanging glances, the girls make an important recommendation to Takumi. He should hire someone to help him during the manufacturing of the carriage. After all, he works without rest all the time. Maria already takes care of the domestic chores. Sophia always remains by his side to protect him. But none of this will be of any use if Takumi himself does not take care of his own health. Upon realizing how much they are worried, Takumi decides to accept the suggestion. However, the girls make it a point to emphasize that the hired person must be specifically a woman, insisting that this detail is important. The next day, Takumi visits the Palm Company. There, he describes to Volton the characteristics of the slave he is looking for. After listening attentively, Volton concludes that Takumi needs someone with magic aptitudes to assist him. Meanwhile, Maria asks Sophia if she has seen Maple, since she cannot find her anywhere. The two imagine that she entered the building to explore on her own and decide to search for her. Sophia enters the building and ends up finding Maple. She startles Riva, without doing this on purpose. Next, she asks forgiveness from Riva and explains that despite the scare, Maple is a very gentle creature and would never hurt anyone. Riva becomes impressed with Sophia's beauty. Upon picking up a book that had fallen to the ground, Sophia notices that it is an old work. Sophia finds Takumi again. He asks her to accompany him, as the time has come to meet the candidate who will be able to work by his side. After this conversation, Takumi presents Riva to the rest of the group. As usual, Maria and Sophia end up making a big fuss during the introductions, drawing some laughs, observing the way everyone interacts. Riva feels that she will surely get along very well living with them. Meanwhile, in the Holy Empire of Sidonia, a report is delivered to the king, informing that the kingdom of Barkila continues responding negatively to all the letters sent by the empire. The king becomes irritated and declares that the time has come to teach a lesson to the kingdom by force, and orders the preparations to mobilize the Order of Knights. Elizabeth enters the hall and asks her father to reconsider. She says that it is still too early to act, as the hero summoning ritual needs more time to produce results, recommending that they wait a few months before initiating any conflict. The king responds that he cannot simply ignore Barkila's disobedience. In view of this, Elizabeth suggests utilizing the influence of faith to achieve their objective. A priest present at the meeting alerts that this strategy could provoke the wrath of the faithful, but Elizabeth counters by saying that this will also cause the divine squad to spring into action. Some time later, Takumi begins to manufacture the new carriage destined for the king. Riva accompanies the whole process and becomes fascinated with his skill, impressed with every detail of the construction. She attentively observes the work while Takumi encourages her, saying that one day she will also be capable of creating something of that level. According to him, Riva already possesses the most important element of all, a true passion for alchemy. While the two converse animatedly about alchemy and exchange various pieces of knowledge, Sophia observes the scene from a distance with a satisfied smile, happy to see Takumi sharing what he loves so much. When the carriage is ready, Takumi proceeds to the castle to deliver it personally to the king. An elderly and pleasant gentleman approaches the carriage, observes the work with attention, and comments that it is an extraordinary vehicle. Takumi responds naturally that he himself constructed everything alone, At that exact moment, Papek and the other officials appear running desperately, calling for the king. Only then does Takumi realize, with surprise, that the old man with whom he had been conversing the entire time was precisely the king himself. The monarch apologizes for not having introduced himself earlier, while everyone around kneels and asks why His Majesty decided to appear in such an unexpected manner. The king responds in a relaxed tone that forcing someone to wait in an audience room just to deliver a gift prepared by their subordinates takes away all the fun of the meeting. The response leaves everyone without a reaction. Immediately afterward, he clarifies that he was only joking. In reality, he made it a point to get to know personally the famous alchemist responsible for so many achievements and to thank him without all that exaggerated formality. The king reveals that Takumi was the person responsible for solving the grave problem of the sewage system of the kingdom. He admits that he would like to organize a grand banquet in his honor, in addition to rewarding him with a large sum of money and even granting him a title of nobility. However, he explains that doing so would end up drawing too much attention, especially from people and nations with dubious intentions. Takumi perfectly understands the king's reasons and expresses gratitude for keeping him away from the gaze of the Holy Empire of Sidonia. At the same time, he feels an enormous relief upon realizing that the king is a simple, humble, and completely unpretentious person. After that, the group initiates the return trip to Volton. While observing the departure through the castle window, the king comments to his assistants that officially on that day, he did not receive anyone in an audience. Next, he requests that everyone maintain absolute secrecy regarding the meeting. If the artifact utilized in the sewage system began to be exported to other countries, Takumi's influence would grow in an extraordinary manner. This is precisely the greatest fear of the king, because he knows that if this happens, the Divine Light Organization will not remain with folded arms. With the help of the Papek Company, Takumi manages to buy the house where he previously lived on rent, officially becoming the owner of the property. Maria says that she does not need to receive a salary, as a small allowance would already be sufficient for her. Sophia also says that she does not make it a point to receive payment. Takumi disagrees. One day the contract between them will come to an end. When that moment happens, it will be important that each one has some money saved to guarantee a comfortable future. Sophia responds in a sincere manner that this makes no difference to her, as she is an elf. Her life expectancy is much greater than that of Takumi. She believes that she will live many years after his death and reveals that she intends to spend the remainder of her life taking care of his grave. Maria says that she hopes to be buried alongside him when that day arrives. Meanwhile, in the Holy Empire of Sidonia, one of the artifacts utilized in the sewage system ends up reaching the hands of the Empress. Upon examining it, she demonstrates profound indignation and declares that that object represents a true sacrilege. One of her subordinates informs that various members of the Divine Light Organization share the same opinion and defend the complete destruction of these artifacts, considered profane. According to them, since the origin of all this technology is in Volton, it is not acceptable to permit them to continue dishonoring Anati and the Pope. Therefore, they conclude that it will be necessary to eliminate the problem by the root, making it clear that they intend to act directly against Takumi and everything he created. Some time later, Riva converses with Takumi and reveals that she wishes to register at the Adventurers Guild. Her objective is to be able to serve him in the same way that Maria and Sophia do. With this in mind, Takumi decides to take her to the Adventurers Guild to carry out her registration. During the process, the receptionist takes the opportunity to make a suggestion. He believes that it is time to officialize a team and choose a name for it. Takumi responds that his true objective was never to become an adventurer, making it clear that the guild is only a means to carry out other activities and not his purpose in life. In addition, the group still does not possess a front line like that of the Lion's Fang. However, everyone knows that Takumi's team is already powerful enough to destroy practically any obstacle that appears along the way. At that moment, the mustachioed gentleman intervenes and says that he will be responsible for training Takumi. But what should be a training turns into a true torture session. Takumi gets beaten continuously, taking one thrashing after another. The trainer continues asking what the name of the group will be. Between one punch and another, Takumi responds that he intends to call it the birth of the toilet. The response is so absurd that the mustachioed man sends him flying with a blow, with good reason. While the training continues, Riva observes everything while frightened and begins to think that the life of an alchemist is perhaps much darker than she imagined. Later, Takumi gathers the girls and implores for them to help him choose a name for the group. Otherwise, the mustachioed man will probably end up killing him during the training. Riva makes her suggestion by proposing a long name. Unfortunately, she also does not demonstrate much talent for creating names. Maria manages to be even worse. She begins to suggest random names like toilet, refrigerator, and even Takumi's underwear. Without alternatives, Takumi decides to resort to Sophia and asks if she can think of something better. But Sophia is furious. She cannot accept that that mustachioed man left her master in that state and says that she intends to break his legs. Takumi calms her down and explains that all of that was part of the training. Thanks to that brutal method, he managed to increase his levels of evasion, instinct, body control, and martial arts. Upon hearing this, Sophia ends up resigning herself, even without liking the situation one bit. Meanwhile, in the Holy Empire of Sidonia, Akane continues investigating the true history of that world. Conversing with a merchant who usually travels between diverse kingdoms, she discovers that the doctrine of creationism says that all races descend from Nolan. This information causes a new doubt to arise in her mind, wanting to know why precisely they were summoned to a kingdom controlled by the divine light, and, above all, they want to know what the true role is that they expect them to perform in that world. At another time, Takumi delivers a ring and a staff to Riva, explaining that she will need good equipment when they begin to carry out adventure missions. For Maria, he prepares a new pair of claws, leaving her very happy and grateful for the gift. After that, Takumi returns to the training and continues taking one thrashing after another. The reason is simple. Nobody can think of a decent name for the group, and each suggestion is worse than the previous one. The situation reaches a point where even Sophia, upon noticing how awkwardly her master fights, decides to support the mustachioed trainer so that Takumi learns to fight for real. Sometime later, the receptionist of the Adventurers Guild makes a suggestion to Takumi. He recommends that the group accept an escort mission. Should they manage to conclude it with success, everyone will rise in rank at the guild. In addition, it consists of a relatively simple job, which is only a trip of approximately 4 days, counting the departure and the return. In the beginning, Takumi refuses the escort mission, but upon noticing how excited the girls are with the idea of living a true adventure, he ends up changing his mind and accepts the job. During the trip, they discover that they are going to escort the paper company, responsible for transporting diverse day-to-day products, in addition to the purifying artifact. On the way back, the Enterprise intends to buy milk to supply the city. Takumi becomes delighted when he discovers that in that world milk and cheese exist. While they proceed along the road, the group encounters several monsters involved in a territorial dispute. Before anyone can react, Camellia resolves the entire situation in a matter of seconds, eliminating the enemies without any difficulty. After some time, they arrive at the city of Kilbuse. There, everyone takes the opportunity to try a delicious creamy stew. Delighted with the flavor, Takumi comments to the girls that, before they return home, they need to buy cheese and milk by any means. Later, during a stroll through the night market, everyone tries a bread stuffed with cheese. As soon as he takes the first bite, Takumi feels an enormous wave of nostalgia. Despite being in that world for only a few months, he has the impression that he has already lived there for many years. Since the flavor of the bread, the milk, and the cheese awakens memories so strong that it seems to transport him back to his old world. He misses it very much and asks Sophia if rice exists in that world. She responds that yes, it does. Rice is a cereal quite consumed in the kingdom of Samandor, but it hardly reaches Barkula. However, she believes that it is possible to find it for sale in the capital. Upon hearing this, Takumi deeply regrets not having bought rice when he was there. Noticing that Takumi became downcast, Sophia asks if he is well. In response, he asks if she never misses her homeland or the food of her people. Since she has been away from home for so many years, Sophia smiles and responds that sometimes she feels a bit of nostalgia. But she likes the life she leads currently much more. For 50 years she lived trapped in an empty existence until she met Takumi. Forging a contract with him gave her a new opportunity to live. Since then, she prefers to look only toward the future, because it was Takumi who gave her wings when she lived imprisoned. For that reason, she believes that it is not worth it to remain stuck to the past. Riva agrees with those words, as does Maria. Upon hearing all this, Takumi realizes that he also received a new chance to live, but jokes with himself saying that he did not receive just wings, but rather a true turbine. He remembers the blessing granted by Nolan and concludes that it was precisely she who gave him strength to move forward. Inspired by this thought, Takumi asks the girls what they think of the name, the Wings of Nolan, for the adventurer group. Everyone loves the idea and agrees without hesitating. From that moment on, the team officially becomes named the Wings of Nolan. Sometime later, when they return to Volton, as soon as they cross the door, Takumi notices that the environment is taken over by a paralyzing mist. Maria, Sophia, and Riva fall to the ground unable to move. At the instant when the enemies are about to kill Takumi, Maple springs into action and manages to reverse the situation. After that, Maple eliminates the effects of the paralysis from the girls. Still surprised, Maria asks why Takumi was not affected by the mist. He explains that he possesses immunity both to paralysis and to diverse types of venom, exactly like Maple. Next, Maple shows that she also managed to capture several invaders on the outside of the house. In view of the situation, everyone concludes that the attack was carefully planned and decides to seek out the Adventurers Guild to ask for help. The next morning, Takumi receives the confirmation that the invaders belong to the Divine Squad, an organization tasked with eliminating any person considered an enemy of the Divine Light. In other words, it consisted of the most fanatical and radical members of that religion, and the main motive for the assassination attempt seems to be the creation of his purifying artifact. Before they existed, it was the priests of the Divine Light who regularly performed the purification of the sewage system using sacred magic. In reality, this task was divided between the followers of creationism and the Divine Light. The difference is that the priests of the Divine Light charged enormous sums of money for the service. Now that Takumi's artifacts do this work in a permanent and much more efficient manner, the organization lost one of its greatest sources of income. Therefore, in their view, Takumi transformed into an evil that needs to be eliminated. In the face of this situation, Takumi considers leaving the kingdom and moving to another country to escape the reach of the Empire. However, his allies convince him that remaining in Volton is the safest decision, since that territory follows the religion of creationism and can offer a much greater protection against future assassination attempts. Takumi agrees and comments that it will be best to stop doing missions, since he is being targeted. But the mustachioed man responds that he is crazy if he thinks he will let him do that. After all, their group is one of the 5 best in the city. Sophia says that she will not permit anything to happen to him. The mustachioed man reminds him that he is being trained by him, so very soon nobody will be capable of facing him. While they proceed by carriage, Takumi thinks that the previous night he put the girls in danger, and that is what worries him the most. Upon arriving at the guild, they inform the receptionist that the name of the group will be the Wings of Nolan. The receptionist alerts Takumi that the rumor that he was attacked has already spread, and to make things worse, they added that a reward exists for his head. Since many adventurers are blinded by money, the best thing is for him to be very careful, as they might accept jobs outside the guild to hunt him down. Some time later, Takumi apologizes to the girls for having put them in danger. However, they say that they will support him at all moments, and that he does not need to blame himself for that. Even so, Takumi feels bad for forcing the knights to keep watching over him and notifies that he intends to install some artifacts to create a barrier around the mansion. But they wonder what they are going to do when they leave for a mission. Then, Sophia recommends that to resolve this matter, he find a female attacker or a female tank for the group. But everyone makes it very clear that this person needs to be a woman. They support him having a harem, just as we all dream of. For this reason, Takumi decides to talk with Mulan to look for someone with whom he can forge a contract, since trust does not arise out of nowhere and the best thing is to have someone officially contracted. The girls agree, but make it a point to say that they trust him even without a contract. Later, while everyone is sleeping, Takumi spends the night designing the magic circle of the barrier. The next day, Takumi and Riva begin to draw magic circles on the metal plates. Sophia approaches and asks to let her help them, as she wishes to study more about artifacts. Takumi accepts and asks her to engrave the alchemical circle on the metal plates. As soon as they finish, he puts his hands to the work to prepare the artifact. At that time, Takumi notices that Maple and Camellia are training against golems made of threads, which makes him think that golems are also alchemical creations. However, the circle of the control core is extremely complicated to make, and with his current level of magic, he would still not be capable of creating one. Even so, they would be very useful for defense. But for now he still does not have that capacity, so he decides to continue working on the barrier. As soon as he begins, he miraculously rises in level. His magic control increases to the maximum, and he learns a new skill, formula management. If he manages to increase the level of this skill, he will be capable of creating golems. Meanwhile, in the Holy Empire of Sidonia, they discover that the Divine Squad was captured, and that its members did not manage to take their own lives before that. Considering contract magic, it is very probable that at this point they already know that they were followers of the Divine Light, making the entire situation quite problematic. For this reason, Elizabeth recommends to her father that he leave the kingdom of Barcula aside for now and give priority to the original plan, which is to summon the heroes. According to her research, they can perform the summoning in at most 2 or 3 months. Meanwhile, Takumi tries to manufacture the core of a golem, but notices that the task is far from simple. Riva wonders why he is so determined to create a golem, and Takumi responds that it would be very useful to have one guarding the house. Maple comments that she and Camellia already do this surveillance work, but Takumi explains that there is no way to know from where other people might try to enter to attack them. Then Maple suggests that instead of trying to create a golem from scratch, he simply capture and tame one. And later, when conversing with Sophia, she explains that to the west of the Forest of Death, sometimes some stone golems appear. As for iron golems, they can be found in the old dungeon close to Hora's. Takumi decides that he would like to obtain an iron golem, but Sophia advises him not to do that without having a tank or an attacker in the group. For this reason, they end up going to the west of the Forest of Death in search of a stone golem. Fortunately, they encounter a huge one, which probably was the guardian of the ruins. Sophia explains that to defeat it, it is necessary to attack the control core located in its center. But if they destroy this core, they will end up killing the golem, which would not be convenient at all. In view of this, Takumi goes straight toward the golem. The girls try to protect him, but he asks them to stop, because he is having a strange sensation in relation to that creature, and the golem approaches him, but demonstrates no intention of attacking him, which makes Takumi realize that perhaps that golem is protecting some ruins of Nolan, and since Takumi is blessed by her, a strange connection exists between the two. Therefore, upon trying to tame it, he manages to do this with an impressive ease, which confuses the girls a little. Takumi decides to give the golem the name of Titan and notices that its attributes are truly excellent. Maple welcomes it to the group, but at that moment it seems that Titan tries to transmit that it would like to have a more versatile body. Takumi responds that he will do his best to fulfill this desire. After that, the time comes to return to the city. However, if they return with a golem the size of Titan, they will certainly cause an enormous fuss. Unexpectedly, Titan decreases in size and becomes small, making it much easier to bring him back without drawing attention. Meanwhile, a few months in the future, we see that the summoned heroes have become much stronger than the old training platoon. This time, their faces are filled with malice. Before departing accompanied by her girls, Akane comments that they are the worst type of people. Returning to Takumi's time, he begins to work on the construction of a new body for Titan, but before continuing, he decides to resolve some pending matters. Thus, he gathers all the girls and explains that if they continue by his side, they will be running great danger. For this reason, he intends to cancel their contract, as he believes that the best thing is for them to distance themselves from him. The girls cannot believe this decision. Sophia asks how long he has been thinking about this, and Takumi admits that he made this decision the day after the attack, as he believes that this is the best solution. He explains that now he counts on Titan, and that both Maple and Camellia will have to remain by his side due to being his familiars, whereas they need to live in a safe place. In addition, he promises to pay everything he owes so that they can live without any worry. The girls become deeply sad. Suddenly, Maria points her spear at Takumi and declares that if he really wants to cancel the contract, first he will have to defeat her. With her voice loaded with sadness, she asks why he always puts their safety above his own life. Takumi responds that all of them are important to him, and that he cannot bear the idea of seeing them running danger. Maria reminds him that they are the wings of Nolan, and that it was Takumi himself who said that everyone together motivates each other. If he loses his wings, he will never manage to fly again. She becomes very emotional, falls to her knees, and begins to cry. Sophia approaches and explains that Takumi is merely worried about all of them. She looks directly at him and says that she understands his feelings, but hopes that he also comprehends that those words are the cruelest he could have said to them. Takumi recalls the moment when each of the girls decided to join him and realizes how selfish he was for not understanding their feeling. He apologizes for having tried to impose his own will and asks if they would still accept remaining by his side. Maria responds that her future is by his side. Sophia declares that both her body and her soul belong to Takumi and that she is willing to give her own life for him. Riva comments that her studies are still just beginning, but that she wishes to learn as much as possible from Takumi to create new artifacts and inventions. Upon hearing each one of them, Takumi realizes that he is part of an incomparable group. Some time later, Takumi concludes the manufacturing of an impressive armor for Titan. With the new structure, his vitality increases from 800 to 2800 points. In addition, he finally becomes capable of speaking. Titan becomes extremely happy with his evolution, since his body was constructed with adamantite. His armor is made of mithril, and he still possesses a huge arsenal of weapons. If that were not enough, he also acquires the incredible capacity to transform into a Megazord, elevating his attributes to an even more absurd level. The girls believe that in that state, Titan would be capable of even defeating a dragon. Takumi could not be more satisfied with the result. Meanwhile, Nolan observes everything with an expression of disgust, seeing Takumi marveled at his new creations. At that moment, her assistant informs that signs of the existence of a Nadi have begun to emerge, even though this entity was not supposed to exist. This makes Nolan think that due to the influence of the faith of the divine light, this existence might end up transforming into an evil spirit. As Sidonia, the country responsible for summoning the heroes, is involved in this whole situation, everything indicates that a war will end up breaking out. Unfortunately, Nolan cannot intervene directly, and in the end, everything will depend on the human she chose to help. Exactly 1 year prior, we see countless villagers being forced to abandon their homes. They blame the nobles, who fled to other lands and left them completely without resources. Amidst the crowd, a girl from the Beastman race appears, anxious in the face of that situation. While she observes everything around her, she wonders why she came to this world and remembers a tomb. At the same time, Godwin conducts a meeting to discuss the situation of the villagers who were abandoned by their nobles. Now they need to find a way to welcome all those people and offer a new place where they can live. The problem is that there are more than 1,000 people, and a very large terrain will be necessary for everyone. There is only one place that would serve for this, and it is completely taken over by monsters. Even so, the only way to overcome this crisis is to clear that entire region. On the other hand, we see our group entering a dungeon, one of those that possess the second highest level of difficulty in the rank, a Beast King Forest of Hank. The monsters are much stronger, but there is nothing that Takumi's group cannot resolve, so much so that they manage to reach the end of the dungeon in just a single day. The only problem is that while they were advancing, Takumi ends up stepping on a trap. With this, everyone needs to start running desperately so as not to be crushed. During the escape, they end up entering a different corridor, where they come across a gigantic earth dragon, a rankus monster. Takumi orders Maple and Titan to immobilize the beast, while he and the girls will unite their attacks to cause the maximum possible damage to the dragon. To complete this, Titan also enters the battle. Even so, all those attacks are not sufficient to defeat it. Sophia alerts Takumi that the weak point of the dragon is located on one of its sides. Summoning Camellia, Takumi takes advantage of the opportunity to attack exactly that point, and immediately afterward throws his sword directly into the mouth of the dragon, disintegrating the creature completely. Thanks to this battle, Camellia evolves into a dragon horse. In addition to the evolution, the group also finds a treasure chest. Some time later, upon returning to the city, Godwin gathers the group and explains the situation of the southern land. The region is infested with monsters. For this reason, it is still not suitable to be inhabited. No kingdom demonstrated interest in those lands precisely because of this constant danger. In the past, the kingdom of Terralia tried to conquer them, but failed, and many believe that this defeat marked the beginning of its decay. Despite this, in that region diverse deposits of adamantite and mithril exist. Godwin goes straight to the point and asks Takumi if he would be capable of constructing a village in that region. Takumi is left unable to believe the request. Godwin asks him not to react in that manner and explains that he heard about what happened in Baldi, where Takumi managed to construct a very sturdy wall in a few hours. It is precisely because he knows what he is capable of that he is making this request. However, Sophia asks everyone to wait a moment, because everyone knows the current situation of Takumi. Godwin responds that he already knows the entire situation. Precisely because of this, he feels bad for making such a heavy request. Even so, Takumi asks Sophia to calm down a little. Godwin reveals that a year ago, a settlement that was still in development was abandoned because some corrupt nobles completely interrupted its progress. As a consequence, all the residents became refugees and ended up scattered between Volton and the lands of Rockford. Now his greatest desire is to offer a new home to these people as soon as possible. Upon hearing this story, Takumi accepts the request, as he cannot bear the idea of leaving so many people abandoned to their own fate. He himself was once left without a place to call home, and even so he was received with much affection by everyone. For him, helping those refugees would be a way to repay all the kindness he received. Therefore, Takumi begins to work. Using his magic, he paves an entire road in a matter of seconds. Next, he constructs a huge reinforced wall and still digs a large moat around it, transforming the location into an absurdly sturdy fortress. After that, he creates water channels, cuts down the necessary trees, eliminates all the monsters of the region, and performs countless other tasks. The group truly shows why it is considered one of the best, perfectly dividing the functions among everyone. They advance at an impressive pace, and in a very short time, an entire city begins to take shape. As soon as everything is ready, Takumi asks Sophia to go to Volton to notify that they can already bring the new resident. When she arrives and delivers the news, nobody can believe it. In just 10 days, they constructed a place completely prepared to receive more than 1,000 people. The wagons begin to depart toward the new location. Among the refugees is the same girl seen previously. During the trip, many comment among themselves that they were probably sent to work in a region infested with monsters just so that the kingdom could rid itself of them. However, when the soldiers arrive at the destination, Takumi goes to receive them personally, and one of the knights becomes totally surprised and asks what all that is. Takumi explains that the walls were constructed to protect the city from the monsters, that the castle will serve for the rulers of the region, and that the houses were made for all the residents. Takumi was so careful and detailed in the construction of that supposed settlement that the knight himself affirms that that can no longer be called a village. In reality, it consists of a true city that even possesses a castle. Meanwhile, Sophia approaches the same girl she had seen before and asks if she is alone. The woman reveals that she lost her husband in the last settlement where she lived. Upon noticing her situation, Sophia comments that working alone will probably be very difficult and asks if she would have any interest in taking on another type of work. Next, she explains that she could talk with her master Takumi, who is precisely the person responsible for the construction of that city, since at that moment everyone was busy. Sophia explains that they are looking for someone who can take care of the personal needs of her master. The girl understands that the wrong way, but Sophia clarifies that what they really need is someone who knows how to cook for Takumi. The woman responds that she knows how to cook very well, so Sophia says that she will return later to fetch her and take her to have lunch along with her master. Sometime later, Takumi gathers with Manny and explains that he would be very happy if she accepted to work taking care of them. However, while he speaks, Manny remembers all the comments she heard during the wagon trip. Because of that, she ends up refusing the offer, asking herself if they are all condemned to suffer once again in yet another city. Next, she reveals that she cannot trust anyone, as her deceased husband died due to the excessive exploitation imposed by the noble. Sophia tries to defend Takumi, but Takumi asks her not to interfere, saying that it is best to simply leave the matter aside. After the conversation, Manny decides that she needs to leave that place. She believes that after the response she gave, she will end up becoming a target. Deep down, she realizes that she merely took out all her frustration on Takumi, as she was irritated for not being able to do anything to change her own situation. The great problem is that she ends up leaving the city without thinking, precisely when the outside is filled with monsters. Maple alerts Takumi that a huge horde of monsters is approaching the city. They gather with the responsible knight, and Takumi orders that the drawbridges be raised and the gates closed. He also requests that the soldiers concentrate all efforts on placing the citizens in safety, while he and his group will prevent any monster from managing to enter the city. Meanwhile, Manny tries to return, but finds the bridge already raised. Some villagers alert Takumi that she disappeared. He decides that he will not permit anyone to get hurt. Everyone climbs onto Titan and goes after her. When they finally find her, Manny is about to be devoured by the monsters. She has no more hopes and accepts that perhaps she was born only to die. At that instant, Takumi appears to save her, while the girls eliminate all the monsters around, clearing the area. During the combat, Manny notices that Takumi was injured. He tells her not to worry, but Manny runs to treat his injury, since he got hurt because of her. While taking care of him, she asks for sincere forgiveness. Takumi responds that that does not matter, and that the most important thing is to know that she is well, as he will never permit any of the villagers to be injured. Upon hearing these words, Manny realizes that Takumi is different from all the men she knew in the past. She asks embarrassedly if there is still time to accept the job he had offered her. Takumi responds that yes, and the girls welcome her. Meanwhile, Godwin receives a report about everything that happened and asks the knight if he believes that that new city will be capable of serving as a strategic fortress to protect the region. Meanwhile, in Sidonia, the news arrives that in the place where previously an area taken over by monsters existed, a huge city surrounded by walls emerged out of nowhere. In addition, the knights who were protecting the location had been sent by Volton. In view of this, everyone begins to suspect that a certain alchemist might be involved in the construction of that city. At that moment, Elizabeth enters the royal hall, declaring that she will not permit them to continue doing whatever they want forever, and that it will be Sidonia that will govern the entire continent. Meanwhile, Takumi believes that he should widen the roads, since they will be utilized for commerce in the future. At that instant, Manny appears running to bring food to them. A huge wave of dark and unpleasant magic spreads through the entire continent, and everyone can feel this energy. Takumi remembers the words of Nolan, and 1 year has already passed since he arrived in that world, which means that the moment of which Nolan had spoken has arrived. Observing everything from afar, Nolan notices that in just 3 months, the summoned heroes have already reached rank A. Now it is only a matter of time until the decisive moment happens. Elizabeth informs the heroes that the time has come to present them officially before all the kingdoms. With expressions filled with arrogance and malice, the two heroes respond that they will show the entire world that the heroes of Sidonia are the best of all. Meanwhile, the girl accompanying them shows happiness at being able to leave that place. In the meantime, Takumi concludes the paving of the entire road leading to the city he built. Now, knights and merchants coming from Volton utilize this path daily. In addition, several artisans from Volton have started teaching the local residents how to build houses, work in blacksmithing, and, most importantly, cultivate the land. Thanks to this, the place begins to look like a real city. Outside the city, the girls continue hunting monsters when Maple alerts Sophia that she captured a creature she had never seen before. As soon as she looks at the monster, Sophia recognizes it and wonders what a creature of that type is doing in that region. Sometime later, Takumi is informed that increasingly powerful monsters are appearing in the surroundings of the city. The problem is not defeating them, but discovering why they are emerging. The true worry is understanding why these creatures are approaching precisely that city. Sophia explains that 3 months ago, they noticed an alteration in the magic energy of the continent, something that probably affected the behavior of the monsters. However, Takumi believes that the most probable cause is the summoning of the heroes. At nightfall, Takumi receives a message informing him that Barak requested his return to Volton, as he has an important mission to deliver to his group. Then we discover that everyone is talking about the heroes summoned in Sidonia, and Maria comments that perhaps they emerged to put Sidonia on the right track. After that, Takumi thinks that nobody chose Sidonia, because he knows they were summoned by force. Even so, he still holds a hope that the heroes can help straighten out the kingdom. But that is very far from being reality. On the other hand, the Emperor of Sidonia blesses the heroes before their departure. Before leaving, they ask if that slave girl will accompany them. The girl tries to apologize, but one of the heroes tells her to shut her mouth in a very arrogant manner. Another one of them interrupts him and tells him not to mess with his friend, but the heroes begin to despise her, saying she is just a slave. Meanwhile, Elizabeth and a priest begin to pray for the heroes, and the statue of Anati begins to emit a dark aura. Back in Volton, at the Adventurers Guild, they inform Takumi that the summoned adventurers are 2 young men and a girl. Judging by their features, Takumi suspects that they are also Japanese. The receptionist explains that they will be visiting the churches of the Divine Light, even if that is just an excuse to indirectly pressure the religion of creationism. But Takumi is not there for that. Instead, he is there to receive a request from the Papic Company. When they return home to prepare, Manny asks Takumi to let her go with them. He warns that it is dangerous, and that she is not an adventurer, but she says she does not want to be left alone in the mansion. Maria happens to be passing by and says she understands the situation, since Manny just arrived and would be left by herself. Sophia also agrees with her. Manny makes a puppy dog look at Takumi, and he cannot refuse, but he makes it clear that she can only go if she is always accompanied by Maria and Riva. Meanwhile, the heroes proceed with their journey by carriage, complaining about the swaying of the vehicle. The girl accompanying them just observes everything with disappointment, hearing them comment that they want to take all the elves for themselves. I don't judge them because I would think the same. Continuing, they are also warned that in the kingdom of Barkula, it is forbidden to remove slaves from the territory. But the heroes, filled with arrogance, say that nobody will be able to stop them, and that in a short time, nobody on the continent will be a match for them. Meanwhile, she thinks that she needs to do something now that they have left Sidonia, believing that perhaps in Vaculatos, the capital of Barcula, she can find a way to change this situation. In the capital, at the Adventurers Guild, they inform Takumi that now he and Sophia are rank A, while Manny has become rank D. At that moment, the heroes enter the guild, walking in an arrogant manner and despising everyone around them. Upon seeing Sophia and Manny, they become enchanted by the two and say they want to buy them. They also notify Takumi that they are willing to pay for them, as was expected. Takumi refuses and recommends that they give up on the idea and go away. They feel disrespected, so the heroes order the girls to accompany them, but they obviously refuse as well. The two get irritated and lunged at Takumi, but he destroys the sword of one of them and finishes off the other. The heroes are left unable to believe what happened. Takumi merely alerts them once again to leave, since drawing a sword inside the guild is a serious crime. Without alternatives and humiliated, the two men end up leaving. Meanwhile, Akane approaches to apologize for her companion's behavior. However, Takumi responds that she does not need to apologize. Upon hearing that his name sounds Japanese, Akane introduces herself as the leader of the Wings of Nolan. Upon hearing the name Nolan, Akane tries to say something, but Takumi covers her mouth and whispers that he is staying at the Lakeside Hotel. At the same time, he thinks to himself that her name had appeared in the revelation skill granted to him by Nolan. Later, Takumi tells the girls what happened at the guild, and they comment that those so-called heroes are nothing but idiots. However, the girl in their group seemed to be someone of greater integrity. Takumi comments that perhaps it wasn't a good idea to reveal the name of his hotel to her. Meanwhile, we see Akane running toward the hotel where Takumi is staying. Her slave companion, Lulu, begs to be left behind, saying she is only getting in the way, but Akane refuses to abandon her. Shortly after, they end up being pursued by the guards of Sidonia. At that moment, Sophia appears and alerts them that the hotel where Takumi is staying is just down the alley. Meanwhile, Maple defeats the guards. After that, everyone gathers at the hotel, and Akane thanks the girls for their help. Next, she asks Takumi if he is also a summoned Japanese person. Takumi responds that this must not be discovered by Sidonia. Akane insists that she does not intend to tell anyone, and so Takumi confirms that yes, he is also Japanese, and that his presence there is related to all of this. His current appearance does not look like that of a Japanese person, which is why the girls are confused upon hearing that. Because of this, Takumi says it no longer makes sense to hide the truth and reveals everything to them. Meanwhile, back with the enemy, the priest orders his men to return to Sidonia and resume the operation later. As for Takumi's group, the girls are surprised to discover that their master also came from the same world as the heroes, and they are even more shocked to learn that he is blessed by the goddess Nolan. But the most important realization is that the Empire of Sidonia will very likely try to manipulate the other kingdoms using the heroes. Akane apologizes to them, but Takumi responds that it is not her fault, but rather Sidonia's, for dragging them into all of this. Takumi then asks why the other two heroes are so despicable. Akane explains that they weren't like that at the beginning, but upon arriving in that world, their personalities changed completely. Takumi questions if they ate and drank the same things, and Akane reveals that she always suspected Sidonia. Because of this, she always purified all the water and food she received before consuming it. On the other hand, her companions, Akira and Yamato, prioritized learning grimoires and didn't practice light magic much. They all come to understand that perhaps the other heroes were manipulated or even had their minds altered. Suddenly, Akane kneels before Takumi and begs him to help her and her companion, confessing that she waited a long time to find a way to escape that place until she could reach a kingdom where she could ask for help. Takumi asks her not to kneel, but also comments that even if she flees to another kingdom, she will still be pursued. Noticing the collar on Lulu, he asks if it is a slavery contract. Akane says yes and adds that she cannot bear to see it, as she believes no one should be chained that way. Hearing this, Takumi breaks the seal on the spot. Lulu becomes desperate and tells Akane that she has nowhere else to go, asking if she intends to abandon her. She begs, crying, to stay by her side. Akane responds that she will indeed stay with her, but no longer as a slave instead. She will be her friend by her own free will. Takumi tells them they can go to his house in Volton. Akane worries about causing trouble, but he says he cannot abandon a fellow compatriot and that the best thing is to get away from the capital as soon as possible. After that, the three return quickly to Volton. Inside Takumi's carriage, Akane is thoroughly impressed by the food. She offers some to Lulu to eat with her, and despite her hesitation, Lulu begins to eat. Upon tasting it, Lulu starts to cry, startling the girls. However, she explains that it isn't because it tastes bad. She is simply emotional to finally eat something so good, as she thought she would never have this luxury again. Takumi concludes that she had probably been under immense tension since the invocation, and that by eating food from her homeland, she was finally able to relax. Meanwhile, in the city built by Takumi, a knight observes the forest seemingly expanding, and a large horde of monsters begins to approach. Back with the main group, Takumi thinks to himself that he needs to speak with the Margrave to inform the king about what to do regarding Akane and Lulu, but for now, the safest option is for them to stay at his house. Later, he gathers the girls and announces that he is going to cancel their contracts, because from this point forward, the situation is going to become even more dangerous. The girls immediately become angry and frustrated, as they do not want a repetition of what happened the last time. Takumi quickly explains that it is nothing like what they are thinking. He only wants them to stay with him in a different way from that moment onward. As companions, friends, and as family, he says that he has known all of them for a long time, and that he is very grateful for everything they have lived through together. Therefore, he feels that they do not need a contract to be united. He makes it clear that he will be happy if they continue to support him as partners. Upon understanding that Takumi still wants them to remain by his side, the girls agree to let him cancel the contracts. As soon as everything is removed, he reinforces that he is counting on them. After that, Takumi is preparing a pair of swords, one named Amaterasu and the other Tsukayomi. Suddenly, he receives a notification from the guild summoning all adventurers of rank B or higher to provide support to the village built by him. Everyone goes to the guild, where they also encounter the Lion's Fang group. The pointed mustached leader explains that a horde of monsters is approaching the town of Uegate, and they believe that the presence of people in the region may have attracted these creatures. At the moment, they are in need of reinforcements, which is why they summoned all adventurers of rank B or higher. However, the situation is complicated, as most of the groups are away on other missions. At the location, only Lion's Fang and the Wings of Nolan are present. Even so, everyone recognizes that these two groups are already powerful enough to match many others combined. The receptionist informs them that there is a third group present, the Scarlet Rose group. The leader is named Merylda, and she introduces herself alongside her companions, Mary, who is the mage, Layla, the tank, Paula, the healer, and Linda, the scout. Merylda provokes the Lion's Fang group, especially Real, until the mustached leader interrupts and orders everyone to get ready. Lion's Fang and Scarlet Rose depart first to assist the village of Uegate as soon as possible. Soon after, we see that Takumi asks Akane and Lulu to stay at the mansion, leaving Titan to protect them while he and the others head into battle. Inside the carriage, Sophia hands Takumi the sacred sword Amaterasu. He explains that he forged it using orichalcum, and that he would like her to use it. Furthermore, he comments that it is the sibling to the other sword he also created, named Tsukayomi. While Amaterasu causes massive physical damage, Tsukayomi inflicts psychic damage with a simple cut, allowing both to be used in coordinated attacks. At that moment, Marie announces that they are about to arrive in Uegate, but as they observe the scenery more closely, Ars warns that they are going to have trouble. When they look ahead, everyone is left in disbelief at the enormous quantity of monsters. The horde is gigantic, and there are still many flying monsters. All the adventurers initiate an attack to prevent the monsters from entering the town. Sophia causes a true carnage, but she is not the only one. All members of the group eliminate any monster that crosses their path alongside the soldier. Upon seeing the intense battle, they are relieved to realize that Lord Takumi has returned and announce that it is time to lower the drawbridge. Meanwhile, the other groups divide themselves to protect the sides of the town, and Takumi along with the girls remain responsible for the main entrance. The battle continues intensely until finally the first wave of monsters is defeated. The citizens run to them, grateful and confident that Takumi came to save them. At that moment, he asks Riva and Maria to take care of the wounded, while he and the rest of the group go to meet with the other adventurers. Upon arriving, they notice something strange. The monsters are retreating. The most unusual part is that they are moving in an organized manner, which should not be possible, since monsters normally do not possess coordination. The soldiers explain that the monsters usually attack, retreat, and attack again after the adventurers have rested. which suggests that there might be a leader behind this giving order. No one has ever heard of a monster with such a capacity for command. Takumi comments that when Seika summoned the heroes months ago, there was a massive instability in the magic of the continent. He suspects that this wave of magical energy may have caused some monster to evolve. Summoning magic is extremely powerful, and since Nolan had forbidden it, it would not be strange if it had caused mutations in creatures. In the Holy Empire of Seika, the Emperor is informed about the horde of monsters approaching Bakura. Instead of concern, he views it as an opportunity and orders them to prepare their troops to take advantage of the weakening of the kingdom after the battle. However, Elizabeth suggests something even more aggressive, to take advantage of the moment to also attack the allies of Bakura, especially the kingdom of Samandor, preventing any type of reinforcement and utilizing the heroes to destroy them. On the other side, the girls are taking care of the wounded, and Riva, while bringing food to Sophia, comments that she is a little worried about Takumi because he is spending too many potions on the wounded. Currently, they no longer have any reserves left since they sent everything they had to the Papek company, which means that Takumi is probably manufacturing more at the moment to meet everyone's needs. Sophia goes to him to recommend that he stop, since the monsters could attack again at any moment, and he needs to conserve his energy. But Takumi replies that the potions are to heal the wounded, and if the kingdom and the people are annihilated, there will be no one left to use those potions. He asks her not to worry, because her only role right now is to not get hurt. Sophia reflects that her master has always been this way, and that is precisely why she swore loyalty to him. Sometime later, she gathers with the girls and asks Riva and Min to take the children to a safe location. At that moment, Ars warns that something is happening in the forest, and the group departs. The monsters only watch from a distance, and the adventurers realize there are still many of them. They decide to attack together, and the monsters initiate the charge. All the mages combine their spells, eliminating a large quantity of them. But that is not enough, and the battle continues intensely. Each group demonstrates great skill, and the Scarlet Rose group becomes responsible for the right side, while Lion's Fang takes care of the left side. Ars prevents the monsters from scaling the walls. Takumi notices that Sophia is advancing too far and asks her to fall back. But at that moment, the monsters begin to retreat once again. Deep inside the forest, one of the monsters begins to devour others, triggering an evolution in its own body. It grows and becomes stronger, emerging from the forest to attack with even greater power. With one strike, it hits Sophia with its tail, nearly killing her. Takumi acts quickly and regrets not having brought Titan. Even so, Sophia ignores Takumi's warning and returns to draw the monster's attention. She tries desperately to dodge the attack, but ends up being hit by the creature's breath. In her second critical moment, on the verge of death, she is saved by Ars and the other girls. Everyone acts in unison, immobilizing the monster. Sophia throws her sword to Takumi, allowing him to finish off the creature. Using both swords, he concentrates all his power into Tsukuyomi and delivers the final blow, destroying the monster. Afterward, he approaches Sophia and uses his magic to heal her wounds, but she tells him to forget about her and worry about himself. Takumi becomes sad and asks why she did something so reckless. She becomes embarrassed and confesses that she only wanted to protect him. Takumi becomes angry and says that she could have died. Sophia responds that her life is worth nothing, but he asks her not to treat her own life as something disposable. After healing all the wounds, the other groups report that the monsters have retreated. Upon hearing that everything has returned to normal, Takumi ends up collapsing due to exhaustion. Sometime after he wakes up, the girls are happy, while Sophia remains gazing outside the house. At that moment, Merylda comments that their leader is an impressive man. A few days later, the group returns to Volton. However, elsewhere, we see the heroes of Seika carrying out a massacre in the kingdom of Samandor. At night, while everyone eats and celebrates together, Sophia stays apart. Akane asks the girls what is happening with her, and they go to Takumi and serve him a plate of meat, saying that he needs to go talk to Sophia. Takumi goes to her, brings her food, and apologizes for shouting, but Sophia replies that he does not need to apologize, because it was her fault. Takumi understands her behavior and thanks her for worrying about him, but says that he does not want her to sacrifice her own life for him. and what he expects from a companion is to cover each other's backs and trust each other mutually. Sophia becomes very moved by his words. Takumi says that he wants to keep her by his side forever. She is touched and replies that she will always be with him. But at that moment, the mood is interrupted by Maria. A few days later, Takumi goes to visit Marsagrave to present the situation of Akane and Lulu. As the request is accepted without any issues, the two move into Takumi's mansion. He also informs them about the massacre that occurred in a village in Samandor. Upon hearing this, Akane feels guilty, thinking that she should have stopped it. She tells Takumi that next time, she does not intend to run away. Takumi thinks that Seika made that girl carry a very heavy burden just to satisfy their own interests. Later, Takumi meets with Nolan, who asks if he has any plans for his life. Since he was summoned a year before the heroes, Nolan replies that everything depends on him. Therefore, Takumi says that he will do everything in his power to protect the people who are important to him in that world, and that he feels good because he can create anything with alchemy. He says that his life is complete and that he likes the path he is following. After that, he offers sweets to Nolan, which she had requested earlier. She accepts them with gratitude and thinks that Takumi's destiny will be anything but sweet, as he is the sole hope of Mildgard. And that is how the first season ends. Do not forget to leave a like and comment, goddesses. A kiss.